Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special meeting of the Metro Board of Directors. I will now call the meeting to order. Ms. Fairfax will commence a roll call of the board members.
Good afternoon. Please respond when you hear your name to confirm your attendance for the record. Chair Ramabhadran.
Present.
Thank you. First Vice Chair Elder.
Here.
Thank you. Second Vice Chair Trevino. Thank you. Secretary Taylor. Director Frieden.
Present.
Thank you. Director Fry.
Here.
Thank you. Director Hollins.
Present.
Thank you. Director Lewter. Present. Thank you. Director Morales.
Present.
Thank you. Chair Ramabhadran, all board members present may be seen and heard by each other participant.
And we understand Board Member Taylor is on his way and will be here shortly as well. Let the record reflect that a quorum of the board is present. Metro is conducting this meeting using inclusive practices so everyone can watch, hear, or participate in today's discussions. This is in line with our continuing commitment to increase accessibility for everyone. As a reminder, closed captioning is available for those viewing this meeting online. On that note, I'd like to remind my colleagues to state their name for the record when making or seconding a motion on any item of business on the agenda. As a reminder, this special meeting is a result of the board's serious consideration of the community's concern regarding the proposed locally preferred alternative for the Metro Rapid University Corridor project in the Metro Next plan. This meeting is a continuation of the discussions on such matter from last month's regular board meeting. The first item of business on today's agenda is the receipt of public comments. Ms. Fairfax will call the name of the speakers who have registered in advance to provide public comments. Ms. Fairfax.
Thank you, Chair Ramabhadran. We have 27 registered speakers who would like to address the board today. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to provide comments. The first speaker is Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia.
I don't think the Congresswoman is here yet.
Okay. Commissioner Garcia.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Garcia. Welcome back. Thank you for being here.
Chair, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the Metro Board. Thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to come back because I wanted to first thank you for the briefing and discussions that we recently had in regards to hearing my concerns of the concerns that I heard from the community. I understand that now the idea of an underpass is a possible option, an alternative to an overpass. I greatly appreciate that and thank you for the work. I do want to share a few expressions of concern and frustration from the community in that getting to this point is exciting. It's great. I appreciate it. But, man, it doesn't need to be this hard. So one thing that I would implore this board to think about is the level and the process of community engagement so that it does not become any more difficult to your respective stakeholders, being the Congresswoman, your commissioner, your members of council, and obviously our constituents, our collective constituents. And so I appreciate those discussions. I don't know what vote you have in front of you today. I don't know the respective process that you have to go through. I was just having lunch with the Congresswoman. She is concerned about timelines and whatever that may or may not be. All I'm here to do is that I understand that you're having to lay out the potential of some particular route. And if Lockwood remains the route, and even if Lockwood does not remain the route, then I am imploring this board to keep an underpass, and if there's a way to memorialize it in your recitals so that the FTA will know the interest and the preference by the community on how this project should be done. I wish I was more familiar with this process back when I was on council and supported Metro on the light rail extension down Fulton. The only thing I'll say is that the meetings I attended back then to help facilitate discussion, now in retrospect, I remember I was there alone. And so let's work together to enhance the community engagement, make sure that we're creating a consensus in the community and not creating division. Mass transit, the need for public transportation is too critical to have a divided community, and I look forward to working with you on that. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you again for being here. We've had you in our building. Happy to host you twice in 2 weeks. I'm really glad we were able to get together, challenge the team to come up with an out-of-the-box thinking and an approach. And you've had our CEO at the community meeting commit to the overpasses off the table. We are looking at the underpass. We've done our due diligence to know whether it's possible, and it will be part of what we are adopting. This is a great way to address both the reliability and predictability for the BRT, making sure that the community can also use the sidewalk pedestrian access, and thanks to our CEO, we'll have more on that in our presentation, the ability for us to also have regular cars and trucks use that if the train is blocking it for an extended period of time. So I think that's a win-win for the region, something that has dodged us for decades. So you have our commitment that the community engagement process will continue, and we'll learn from what we've done in the past and work on a process of continuous improvement. And as much feedback as you have on how we can improve, we are open to that.
Good deal. And again, thank you. And I want to say that from the last meeting I was at to the presentation that we had, and the fact that you were able to conceptualize an underpass to the project was very exciting and very much appreciated. I'm glad that you heard the community, much less myself. This shows that we can work in real time. But again, I would just simply say that don't look to the past community engagement experiences. Let's do better going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and we look forward to the continued partnership, Commissioner. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Councilmember Gallegos.
Welcome back, Council Member. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chair and board members, President Lambert and staff, good afternoon. And thank you for giving me a few moments to address you today again. I'm Robert Gallegos, Council Member of District I, and I'm here to speak on item 2, the locally preferred alternative for the University Corridor BRT project. I want to express my appreciation and thanks to the board for delaying action on this item when it was brought to you a couple of weeks ago. I also want to thank the Metro staff, from Mr. Lambert to the planning and engineering team. You all have participated in not just 1, but 2 town hall meetings in the last couple of weeks. You also have sat down and met with a community-led working group to better understand issues and explore ideas and identify a reasonable compromise. I understand those one-on-one meetings with neighborhood leadership were productive and yielded a bus-only underpass option to cross the UP-owned railroad tracks near Harrisburg at Lockwood. And I understand, or I encourage, that this underpass, BRT-only underpass, can also be utilized for emergency vehicles to go to emergencies when there's trains blocking that crossing, and also to be used for cyclists and pedestrians. So that way we don't have pedestrians and individuals. I have pictures that I showed at the Horseshoe there at City Council where 2 individuals were obviously going to work with their they had a bag lunch with them, and they were actually taking their bikes underneath a train, a stalled train. So I'm hoping that this underpass will also be used for cyclists and pedestrians. While this less intrusive option is welcomed by many, I urge Metro to continue engaging and working with the community as this project progresses. I think we all want to ensure this project meets and exceeds intended transit goals while minimizing impacts and disruptions in the neighboring communities. Again, my sincere thanks to the Metro staff for your work and to the board for your responsiveness on this issue. So thank you again.
Councilmember, thank you, and we look forward to building on the community engagement as we go into the design process, because this is something that's going to be a joint exercise between Metro, multiple other governmental agencies, and the community, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have Congressman Garcia in the room. Congressman, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Well, first let me begin by saying that this is a first for me. I think after all these years, I still remember campaigning for the MTA with Ninfa Lorenzo back when we first got started, and I've never been before the Metro Board. So thank you all for being here, and isn't it great that we can celebrate that that was back then and it's still here and we're still working together. Public transit is very important to our entire region. It's a way to keep a community vibrant. It's a way to make sure the community has a way to get around and do the things that they need to do. So I'm really pleased that you all are continuing that great work. That is why when I first started getting calls, emails, and texts from constituents about the impact of the University line on the historic Latino neighborhoods in the East End, we reached out to have a meeting, a public meeting together, so that we could engage the community and we could lay out the options on the table and give people a chance to provide their input and, of course, to air their concerns. During that town hall, which was really standing room only, I hosted that on Monday. We heard many, many concerns that remain regarding the use of Lockwood as the designated route. While Metro showed that they have studied other corridors, it seemed that there was not enough study on the impact to this very historic Latino neighborhood that would be used as a corridor. We heard at that meeting that there was not enough time for further studies or work on the corridor, since this vote was already scheduled for today in order to make a April 30th deadline, a deadline which we're told was critical to the funding. On Tuesday, the day after the town hall, my office reached out to the Department of Transportation and the Federal Transit Authority to inquire about getting an extension for Metro. I felt strongly that if we had so many concerns that maybe I needed to help get an extension so that we could get all those aired out and addressed. Well, much to my surprise, I was told that there was no deadline, that what was in place was an internal deadline. And I might add that, you know, for us, we didn't really feel like our town hall got the due that it should have, because quite frankly, a lot of my constituents were a little disheartened that we were meeting on Monday, but this board meeting had already been posted. So many constituents felt like, well, they're hearing us, but they're moving forward regardless because it's already set for a meeting. So that too was a concern. But for me, the bigger concern was this so-called deadline, because I was clearly told that it was April 30th and that it was on the part of FTA. Well, I got a response from FTA, and this is a direct quote. This is their words, not mine. The university corridor is in the CIG program, and their next step is engineering, the second and third steps. They are not scheduled to enter engineering until later this year. But according to a board presentation from earlier this year, they have set an internal deadline for submitting the documents required to request entry into engineering. The internal deadline is April 30th. Again, I'll emphasize internal deadline. FDA does not set this deadline. However, it's likely that Metro has back-timed the dates at which certain requirements should be met to achieve their end goal. Also, they're on a 2-year deadline in the phase of the CIG program they're now in, called Project Development. That expires in late September of this year. However, FDA has the capacity to extend that deadline if requested. These are all their words. It's an internal deadline, not an FHTA deadline. So yes, I was very disappointed that Metro is using an internal deadline to justify the progression of this project and the speed at which this vote is taking place. Again, remember, we just had the town hall Monday, which is about less than 48 hours ago, and the item was posted, and I just think that a lot of my constituents feel that they were not able to harness that information, digest it, and prepare even for today's meeting, much less prepare for input on the project. It's as if Metro had already decided to move forward regardless of any concerns raised at the town hall. My constituents feel like they've been given little, if any, time to react to what they learned at the town hall. So given the major implications and the impact of this project on the historic Latino neighborhoods, the Biden administration's commitment to equity and not negatively impacted minority communities, and the fact that there is no hard deadline and no funding contingent on this vote, I would ask that the board vote no on the LPA today, or at minimum, delay it for a month until further work can be done to ensure that this project will not harm those who live in its path. And members, I also have a copy of the email that the administration sent to me if anyone would like to see it for themselves. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Congressman, thank you again for being here. We would like for you to visit us as often as you would like, and not be 40 years after the agency started. So hopefully we'll have a celebratory
Well, you haven't made me mad yet, so.
That's not our intent at all. First of all, thank you for organizing the town hall. Thank you for the long-term partnership on many, many initiatives here at the agency, recognizing the importance of mass transit, and also everything that we are working on the railroad crossings on the East End, and how, and this project too will help address at least 4 of those crossings that we are looking at. You have our commitment to continue to engage with the community. The deadline that we were talking about is steps along the way for us to get to that September, and there's a presentation that we will go into a lot more detail on this once we've heard all of the public comments, which I think time-wise, that's when the presentation happens. So,
but Mr. Chairman, again, just to be clear for the sake of the public, you're speaking of an internal deadline. This is not a deadline set by any agency or the Biden administration.
So the deadline, you're right.
It's just totally discretionary as to you all in your action today.
Not to get into specifics, too much into the weeds, Congresswoman, the FTA gives us 2 years to do project
Correct.
development.
They say that in their email.
And there are multiple things that need to be done to get to that September deadline. The NEPA document and the LPA and the request to enter engineering per FTA guidelines requires 6 months ahead of that September for them to review and provide comments. So to meet the September deadline, we've got to do A, B, and C, frankly, in March of 2023, which is when this item was posted originally, when we had our discussion at the last board meeting. That's where the April 30th comes from. We're already scrunching the 6 months to 4 months of review. So they are absolutely right in their email. It is reverse engineering it from the final deadline to see what all steps we need to do internally in conjunction with the FTA. That's how the April 30th came to. But you're absolutely right. That is a deadline along the project timeline, not the end deadline specified by the FTA.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, what is it you think I should tell my constituents when they ask why was the meeting posted before we even had a town hall to hear us out? That's a hard one for me to answer, so I'm asking for help.
I wasn't aware of the town hall until Saturday, Congresswoman, and we posted on Friday, so I'm struggling with the answer as well. It's a difficult question to answer. The one commitment that the agency has had and will continue to have, and you have my word on it as well, is the continuous community engagement to see how we can resolve issues, whether it's 18-wheelers, whether it is school pickup, whether it's underpass, whether it's drainage, whether it's safety. This community engagement will continue throughout the life of the project till we get to commissioning. But as to the specific of the posting, I wasn't aware of the town hall until Saturday. I don't have a good answer, frankly.
Nor do I. No.
Well, I think.
My apologies, but I don't have a good answer on that.
Well, good partners. I would think that hopefully the next time we do a town hall together, that something gets posted after the town hall rather than before, so that people can feel that when they come, that they are going to be heard and they're going to be able to impact the vote. Again, it was less than 48 hours, and we really, that in my judgment, that's not the way to do full full participation for civic engagement. But I want to express my disappointment and urge again. A lot of concerns were raised. Some of them cannot be addressed by design. You know, you can't design around a school. The school is there. They will be impacted. The community members, the neighbors, they're there. They're going to be impacted. And I just don't see why we don't look at the Jensen corridor a little bit, which was second a little bit harder because it's less people, less neighborhoods. The very idea that we're going to traverse right smack in the middle of a historic Latino neighborhood is very, very troubling.
Can I have a comment? So Congressman Garcia, I just wanted to say thank you for putting that town hall together because it was very informative. There were a lot of people in attendance, and a lot of the concerns that were raised were really the first time that I had heard those concerns. I know we had a lot of speakers come speak, you know, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, and most of the concerns that they brought up were regarding the overpass, but the meeting that you had, there were just a different array of concerns. So I want to thank you for hosting that town hall because it certainly educated me on this process.
Well, I appreciate you and Mr. Trevino attending. I think we worked real hard to crowd build, and they were there, and some of them, quite frankly, were there for the first time. They had not attended the previous meeting because the notice that we sent out was, you know, all the neighborhoods, not just that one civic club. So.
And Congressman, I mentioned this to you, my apologies for not being there. I tried to fly back into town, unfortunately couldn't. But we hope that this is the first of many town halls, because this is a transformational project for the region. And as Ms. Morales pointed out, the more concerns we hear, the better the project gets. So thank you for.
I have the list of concerns here. I have the email here, so if anybody wants copies, we'll be happy to distribute. Thank you.
Yeah. Congressman, thank you so much for your partnership over the years and for your feedback. And like I said, next time we'll do another town hall and a celebratory event at Metro when you're in the building next. So could we move to the next speaker?
Yes, Mr. Chair, our next speaker is Ms. Danielle Laperriere.
Welcome back, Ms. Laperriere.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My name is Danielle Laperriere. I'm the president of the Greater Eastwood Civic Association. We've been advocating since April 2022 for a design that respects and addresses community concerns. In July, we submitted 7 conditions for our community to support this project. With the latest development, I don't know if it's the latest anymore, where Metro's preferred design remains down Lockwood, but with a smaller bus and pedestrian underpass. More of our neighborhood's original concerns have been met, but it does not address them all. The new design addresses our condition of no overpass, a sentiment that held a near consensus among our neighbors. It also respects the conditions of fitting the project inside the existing right-of-way and the addition of a multi-use path. The commitment to proceed with an underpass and eliminate an overpass from consideration should be applauded and seen as a meaningful community engagement and collaboration to improve the design in a way that serves the community while still allowing the agency to achieve its mandate to deliver improved transit in the region. I applaud Metro for getting there. I was in those conversations that got us to an underpass design on Lockwood, but they should have happened earlier. Despite this design improvement, the new design still comes with trade-offs and appears that if a line goes down Lockwood, there's no design where our second condition can be met. That's the protection of our esplanade and its associated old growth trees. In July, we asked that protecting the esplanade occur by a road diet, where a general purpose lane is taken for the BRT lanes in each direction. The new design includes a road diet and its associated safety improvements, but it does so without the benefit of protecting that esplanade. Today, I think you're going to hear a range of sentiments from residents on the new design and the project's route down Lockwood. There are those whose concerns are addressed with the removal of the overpass and the continued commitment to engage in design details. And there are those who believe the project will not be successful down Lockwood because it harms the neighborhood and could be better routed to serve areas more likely to see transit-oriented development. These sentiments reflect the range of opinions in the neighborhood. And at this time, the design changes are too new and opinions too strongly divided for the Civic Association to speak with a unified voice for the neighborhood. It is for these reasons that the Eastwood Civic Association Board voted last night unanimously to take a neutral position on this vote. We do not oppose or support the current LPA, but we hope the board will hear out residents' concerns today and will make commitments to ensure promises made to this community are upheld, regardless of what challenges construction bring if it comes down Lockwood.
Excuse me, you have 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. If the project comes down Lockwood and through Greater Eastwood, we're ready to collaborate on design elements to make the project better. If it comes down Lockwood, I'd ask the board to provide assurances to the community that the design does not revert to an overpass, and if the esplanade and trees are lost, that Metro makes significant investment to address that loss through the creation of improved community assets. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Ms. Laperriere, thank you for your continued engagement and for being here.
Our next speaker is Mr. Clay Dipple.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Clay Dipple. I come to share my thoughts after spending much of the last 2 weeks listening as a member of the Eastwood Civic Association and working with Metro's project team. Personally, I am thankful for many of the changes proposed by Metro after hearing our neighborhood's top priority, to stop an overpass in any form. In my view, the smaller underpass option, while not perfect, is a big improvement to what was originally proposed with an elevated Harrisburg station. The neighbors had spoken. An overpass was untenable, and Metro saw that there was a better way forward. I'm thankful that Troi, Yuhayna, David, and the consulting staff listened to why this was so important to the neighborhood. They came back with a new design that eliminates the elevated lanes, avoids the loss of homes, allows emergency access, and it sounds like maybe vehicle traffic past train congestion, and mitigates flood risks. Many of my neighbors still disagree that Lockwood is the best choice for a route. While I understand Metro's logic, I can also respect those who want to question and understand the selection process. I hope Metro can take a critical look at its own early outreach efforts to understand why so many people are only just now learning about these big infrastructure changes and why so many feel like they didn't have a proper chance to weigh in. That said, I am encouraged by a dramatic shift in the level of communication and cooperation Metro has shown in recent days, and I hope that this level of dialogue continues. If Lockwood is the only route forward, then it's Metro's duty to ensure that this project can be the best it can be to fit into and complement the existing character of Eastwood, the East End, and Houston as a whole. That means continuing to work to make it better. Today's design remains controversial. Trade-offs include the impact it will have on the Lockwood Esplanade, the loss of old-growth oak trees, and the impactful way even an underpass might physically divide the east to west mobility of our neighborhood. But the back-and-forth discussions are happening now to show that project staff is taking the neighborhood's concerns seriously. It is Metro's responsibility to ensure that if it considers removing a beloved esplanade, that the neighborhood is given back much more than what might be taken away. While much improved from an overpass design, it is fair to say that the BRT changes will permanently alter the look, feel, flow, and character of our historic neighborhood.
Excuse me, you have 30 seconds remaining, Mr. Dipple.
Thank you very much. The difference now, though, is that I feel like Metro staff has a much better understanding of what is at stake. They've heard the sincerity of our requests, that a variety of voices be included at every stage of design. The adoption of a locally preferred alternative does not end these conversations. I ask that if the board votes to adopt the LPA today, that they agree in turn to keep Metro's commitments, to continue to listen and adapt to community concerns, and to ensure that what results is a benefit and not a blight to the neighborhood. And I'd like to echo some of the elected officials in saying that there's a lot of room for improvement on engagement, and we've seen what good can come when all parties are at the table in a way that makes this design better. And I thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Dipple.
Our next speaker is Mr. Peter Eccles. Good afternoon. You have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Morning, everyone, or afternoon. My name is Peter Eccles. I am the Director of Policy and Planning for Link Houston. We advocate for a robust and equitable transportation network so that all people can reach opportunity, and we envision a Houston where it is possible to be a first-class resident without owning a car. I am here to express our support for the Metro Rapid University Corridor project and our appreciation of Metro's responsiveness to community concerns with this revised design. Since Metro heeded the call to delay approving the locally preferred alternative 2 weeks ago, we've watched Metro staff and community leaders work tirelessly together to discuss the issues at hand and brainstorm alternative solutions that meet the goals of the project and the neighborhood. The result is a new design for a narrower underpass that employs inventive features like berms and floodgates, some of which were suggested by community members. We applaud both the Metro team and the Eastwood Civic Association for their productive dialogue. This is what responsive and effective community engagement looks like. Last month, we issued a letter of recommendation for Metro's next president and CEO, one being that they must be strongly committed to prioritizing transit riders in the design and construction of Metro Next. With this revised design, Metro has done that. It'll provide a first-class experience for Metro riders while responding to community concerns. We will hold Metro to this standard as this project develops further and more communities make their voices heard. The Metro Rapid University Corridor is a beneficial and necessary project. The route that Metro has proposed will provide a crucial backbone for Metro's network. It traces a direct line between numerous transit centers, hospitals, universities, job centers, and more. This means faster and more reliable trips, in turn, more predictable and comfortable lives for Metro riders. We worry that this message is being lost in some of the communications around why Metro has chosen this alignment. When asked, Metro staff have often referenced scoring used by the Federal Transit Administration, which measures the project's capital and operating costs, adjacent land use, running time, and other technical factors. This really does not mean much to the average person, and it makes the impression that Metro is choosing the bureaucratic path of least resistance. We don't believe that that is the case, but in order to bring others on board, we call on Metro to speak not in terms of dollars and deadlines, but in terms of people served and lives improved. Thank you for your time and consideration. We look forward to our continued collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Eccles, for being here.
Our next speaker is Mr. Dominic Mazoch.
I know I have about 3 minutes starting now. My name's Dominic Mazoch. I'm in the boardroom. I want to ask the people beyond the bar here a question. I did something last week I think all of y'all should have been doing. I actually rode, R-O-D-E, tap my cue card, on the 80 and the 25 from the Tijerina Farm Transit Center. Actually, that's 2 blocks away from the T-Well Transit Center where they sell hay and live chickens, all the way to Eastwood, and earlier in the year, I rode all the way to Edlow. I rode in the bus on the rear axle. My question is, you are using data from pre-COVID. The world has changed since then. And 2, the 80 was originally a red route, basically every 15 minutes. And I was looking at my text thing, and it was saying every 20 minutes. So my question is, you've taken bus service out of the Northeast Quadrant with New Bus Network, and now the 80's every 20 minutes. And I was coming back on the 80 at school time, and when it wasn't spring break. So my question is, why are you building sections 3 and 4 into a neighborhood? Number one, probably doesn't know what's going. Probably they don't know it's happening. Remember, Houston has a very low penetration of internet users. And number 2, one thing, equity-wise, I'm also a taxpayer. Okay, my thing is everything from here on out. If you're going to talk about equity, you're going to have to talk about what's that going to do to the people up there. Also, too, why Tidwell? Why don't you go to Mesa Transit Center? Because that's your connection to the Harris Transit System. And number 2, from that part of the system, you're going to be better off coming to the Med Center and everything else, going from there to the Red Line at North Line. So my thing is, if y'all have not ridden this route all the way, now it doesn't have to be all at one setting, but if you haven't gone out there and ridden this route, you are not doing your fiduciary obligation. Now, fiduciary, we talk about money basically, but you really should get out there and write. You got my email address, write me. Also, too, at all these
Excuse me,
meetings,
you have 30 seconds remaining.
thank you. With at all these meetings, you get email addresses, you get phone numbers. With these meetings, have a text blast, have an email blast. If people don't want it, they can always sign out later. But my thing is, I think with everything else, you're spending too much money for too little return. You're not even doing the silver line like it's supposed to. The silver line stopping at every red light, which at red lights it's not supposed to stop at. So my thing is, maybe the thing needs to be tabled, scrapped, or maybe some of this needs to be converted to a super boost route. As it is now, I don't yield to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic, as always, for your comments.
Our next speaker is Ms. Tina Brady.
Welcome, Ms. Grady.
Hello, I'm Tina Brady, and I live in Eastwood. I'm attending today's Metro meeting for the vote on the locally preferred alternative route. And I'm also speaking with you today to provide some feedback with respect to the Metro's community engagement and communication methods. I also echo Congresswoman Garcia's recommendation of the Jensen Drive route, but primarily I want to speak to communication. One thing that is not ever made clear is that the detail, in addition to the line on the map, is not available to us, was not made available to us until the February-March meetings, and so far as the online documentation, which ECA and community members had been requesting for some time, was not made available online until the March 9 meeting. And as a matter of fact, I did some research and I found on the Metro site a July 2022 public meeting document, somewhat similar to the one that's available for the more recent one. And I have found that in that document, there is no information about alternative alignments. In fact, I haven't seen reference to alternative alignments until the very, very recent meetings. So it wasn't on the community mind to even understand that there was the possibility of alternative alignments. In addition to that, that July 2022 document completely excludes any detail about the section from I-45 to Harrisburg, the section that many of us here are concerned with today. That prior to, the location prior to and following Harrisburg are provided in detail with some information about a bridge and that kind of thing. But specifically the section between I-45 or the transit center and Harrisburg is flat missing from that document, which begs the question in my mind of why that would be. So the first time then again, the detailed document was made available online on March the 9th. That was the first appearance of that segment 4 section between 45 and Harrisburg. In addition to that, it was the first appearance of the alternatives. So on March 8, March 9, we got this information, and immediately as a community, we began to organize. We started with a first street meeting on March the 12th, and there were lots of different meetings, including a meeting where people were installing a banner on the street, which is where that Councilman Gallegos saw us and helped us to start forming meetings.
Excuse me, Ms. Brady, you have
so
30
much.
seconds.
So then we attended the board meeting on the we attended the the committee meeting on the 21st, the board meeting on the 23rd. When in our community organizing, we were building the petition, which admittedly goes directly to an overpass, but without a knowledge of the idea of thinking of alternative routes or anything, and plus being novices at this. But we still got on that petition at that time on the 21st, 238 Greater Eastwood signatures. Today I come to you in this meeting with 397 Greater Eastwood signatures, and now that we've learned a lesson here, we can very easily fix our error of asking for that specific thing and recreate a better targeted petition and come up with significantly more signatures pretty quickly.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Your time is concluded.
Thank you. May I please
Brady.
give somebody the petition?
Certainly. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Ms. Audrey Colombe. Good
Hi.
afternoon. Hi.
I'm speaking to you just on the phone.
Yes, you have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I ride the 80. Thank you to the gentleman who rode the 80. I ride it to work every day. I live right near where this project is going to go in. I'm devastated by what I hear today. This project needs to go somewhere else, and there are many good alternatives that have been referenced, but they were kind of thrown out at us when they'd already been dismissed. There have been huge communication problems with Metro, terrible communication, and I think there are people on the north side of Harrisburg who still, in Second Ward, who still don't know that this is going on. I feel like as residents of Eastwood, particularly in the area where this underpass is supposed to go, we've kind of paid enough already. Our infrastructure gifts include the train that sits on the tracks and the light rail. And so if you put this down Lockwood, it cuts off one of the major ways we can move in and out of the neighborhood, and it goes down to one lane for the traffic each direction. That's just not enough. This doesn't really work. Tuesday night, we heard people from the Metro say, we've worked 5 years. Well, that's nice, and you were paid for your work. We actually live in this place. We don't want our esplanade to be taken away. We like the neighborhood the way it is now. And while those alternatives that were presented look very doable to us, we still don't know why they were thrown out. So I think you have to take very seriously today your votes, because you're changing our lives irreparably. And it's simply beyond comprehension to me that you would do that without actually engaging with the neighborhoods, by the way, and I do mean the neighborhoods that have to do with the potential other alignments too, because I think they're worth talking to. The other paths need to be reconsidered. And just please, this is a historic neighborhood. Don't take away one of the major qualities of life that we have, the esplanade, the green space, the trees, and replace it with something that we can't even use. For me to get to a bus right now, I cross the street. I'm going to have to walk about 8 blocks to get on a bus.
Excuse me, you have 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. I appreciate that some of the other people who have spoken are very happy with the alternative of the underpass. But again, I would like to repeat, please put back into play some alternatives. Thank you.
Ms. Colombe, thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Ms. Sarah Gutierrez.
We're told she's not on. We'll try and come back to her. Let's go to the next speaker.
Our next speaker is Mr. Stephen Quezada. Good afternoon. You have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Good afternoon, Mr. Quezada.
Good afternoon. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mr. Lambert, for allowing the public to comment and for having this second meeting. I'm a lifelong resident of the East End. I live at Walker and Lockwood with my wife, a 4-year-old, a 1-year-old, and 2 dogs. Ruby and Toby would not want me to leave them out. They are also there. I grew up at Dismuke and Lawndale, raised by a single mom. I went to the public schools. I went to U of H, and then I went to U of H Law. I'm a partner at one of the largest law firms in the country now. I have had the privilege, and I do mean privilege, to represent Metro in 2 lawsuits that I have won for it. And I've been in Mr. Lambert's office to discuss those matters. I know that he is good, and he is reasonable, and he is thoughtful. He's also a very strong leader. I am also chair of the East End Management District. I tell you those things not so that you know that despite us not seeing eye to eye on this project, I am not some anti-public transit person. I ride the Green Line, the light rail on the Green Line. I walk from Walker to Harrisburg and get on right in front of the CVS. I am not some anti-metro bias person. I use the metro services. I want what is best for the neighborhood, and I want what is best for Houston. This is where I'm from. This is where I'm raising a family. The East End has 80,000 residents and 3,500 businesses, not including side hustles. That is bigger than Friendswood, okay? This is the most historic Latino Spanish-speaking neighborhood in the city, and it's about to be split in two. There is clearly a need for infrastructure improvements. We need potholes filled. We need shelters and benches at current metro stops as our summers get hotter. We need more law enforcement on the light rail where thieves have targeted the CVS and other businesses. Then they jump back on the light rail to head back downtown. We need smooth sidewalks so that our neighbors, especially our neighbors with disabilities, can get to these bus stops. The East End District has partnered with Metro to work on those sidewalks, and that work is still being done and still needs to be done. A lot has changed since 2017. I don't think we need to tell anybody that after COVID. There's a planned grade separation at Sampson and York. There's a 17-acre development that is intended to be a walkable microcity at Harrisburg and Sampson. 40% of the entire region's railroad freight now comes through the East End. There has been a railroad merger that will increase that by 8 to 11 trains per day. My opposition to the current route as proposed, again, is not anti-public transit. It's not anti-metro. I truly believe that there's an opportunity to get this right and come up with a better plan through effective community engagement that reaches out to the Spanish-speaking community that has been left out of this process.
Excuse me, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. We can make this more sustainable in the long term. We are in a time of political and leadership change in the city and at Metro. We have time to reevaluate, get community input, collaborate with partners, and integrate this project with other infrastructure improvements in the East End. We have time to consider how we can make a plan for the future of Houston and the East End that includes public transit, a walkable neighborhood, and most of all, relief from being blocked by trains. Please do not make a decision that will be a waste of $1.2 billion in taxpayer dollars and that we'll look back at and wish we had done better. And most of all, that we will either have to live with or spend more taxpayer dollars to fix because we are rushing.
Thank you.
Do not let that be the legacy of this project and your leadership.
Thank you for writing and thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Reverend Charles Noble. Good afternoon, Reverend Noble.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the board for the opportunity to speak on today. I want to speak in reference to segment 5, which is a further northeast or area of the city. And I want to say thank you to the Metro for reaching out to our community and actually coming out and having those important conversations with the community residents about the rail, the bus rapid transfer. So we're grateful for it. I'm looking forward to the Tidwell Transit Center and some of the possibilities there as it's expanded. Most of the comments I've heard most of them were liked. What I did find a little disturbing, there was a small group of people who I apparently have approached your board and wanted to reroute the Metro line from coming down Lockwood and actually reroute it to Homestead. And so that was something that I was concerned about, and I wanted to make sure that you knew that as the president of the Fontaine and Scenic Wood Civic Club, that we stand opposed to that and can't see how that would even work out to displace so many people and to making our community. So I just wanted to speak on that. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing. 5 of the project really looks great. And just looking forward to continuing to work with Metro. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Reverend Noble, for your comments.
Our next speaker is Mr. Carlos Lopez. Good afternoon.
Mr. Lopez.
Hi, it's nice to meet you again. And I just wanted to say thank you for your time, and I really do appreciate you guys listening to my comments. I want to start off by saying that I fully support this project, and that while I do think that communication with Metro and the community can be improved, I genuinely believe that this is the proposed plan that you guys have is the best that we can do right now. I just have a few suggestions for the actual route. It was mentioned that vehicle access might be allowed. I don't think this would be a very good idea, as it would just ruin the overall experience, maybe delay a few buses every now and then, and there's already other roads that they can use. And also that this line should use Metro should use the lessons learned from the current Silver Line that's running on Uptown right now, reported by the Houston Chronicle a few days ago. Less than 900 people currently use it, and while I don't think that the line itself there's anything wrong with it, I just think that we should definitely use all the lessons that we've learned and implement them into the university line so we can make the line at the best that it can be. Metro can no longer afford to delay this project. It's been 2 decades since the original university line was proposed. Back then it was light rail, but it's been over 2 decades now, and the community has been waiting for this line ever since. And excuse me. But once again, I just want to say that I fully support this project, and that the current alignment really is the best alignment that's being offered, as any other street or any other neighborhood that this line goes through would either be an industrial wasteland or an area with very low population, ruining the overall experience of the line, as it would be hard for most people to access it, and ridership would be very subpar. Once again, I just want to say that I fully support this project, and if I had to say one thing that could be improved, or I guess like a wish list or something, I would say that I wish that this line was trains instead of buses, but we just have to work with what we got, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez, for your comments.
The next speaker is not on the phone. We will go to Wilson Calvert. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon. My name is Wilson Calvert, and I am a resident in Eastwood. I live on Walker Street, just 3 blocks from the proposed crossing. I wanted to thank the Metro staff, board, and my local elected officials for working with the community and moving towards what I think is the best solution, a BRT and pedestrian-only underpass located along Lockwood. One of the specific reasons my wife and I bought a home in Eastwood in 2021 was for the easy access to the Green Line and for the future promise of BRT service on Lockwood, as promoted as part of the Metro Nix bond election that was passed back in 2019. I am a firm believer in bus rapid transit, and while no plan is perfect, I am excited for the promise of the University Line and how it has the potential to enrich the lives of my neighbors. I also can't wait for the day that I won't have to worry about Union Pacific blocking my path when I walk to the Green Line or bike to work. Thank you so much for your time.
Albert, for your comments.
The next speaker is Kay Warhol. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about the University Corridor. My name is Kay Warhol. I am a native Houstonian, a homeowner in Montrose, and a longtime advocate for improved transit in Houston. And as some of you know, I've engaged in advocacy for the University Line since it was planned to be light rail. Also, I currently serve on the board of the Neartown Montrose Super Neighborhood. First, let me say I am happy to see the University BRT project moving forward. My comments today are focused on segment 2, which is proposed to travel through Montrose on Richmond Avenue. I want to thank Chair Sanjay Ram and Tom Lambert for assembling the project team for a meeting earlier this year and hearing concerns from members about, members of Neartown about specifics of the plan that would have a negative effect on the neighborhood, especially those subdivisions adjacent to the corridor. We felt it was a productive meeting, and we closed with a commitment from Chair Ram and Mr. Lambert for regular discussions between the project team and Neartown members as planning proceeds. I know that a second meeting is in the works, and thanks to Linda Trevino staffer for her diligence in following up on this. I can't stress enough how important it is for that engagement to continue. Regular dialogue between the project team and the Neartown community is critical to ensure that the transit line is truly a benefit to the neighborhood and to ensure the ultimate success of the project. I support the proposed route on Richmond Avenue because it will provide access to a significant part of Neartown. But the design has to respect the character of this neighborhood and to recognize the needs for movement of pedestrians, cyclists, and cars around and across the corridor. It isn't enough to get the line built, although we've waited long enough for it. The details matter. So I look forward to our ongoing work with your team on the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warhol, for your comments.
Our next speaker is Greg LeGrande. Good afternoon.
Yes, hello. Good morning, or good afternoon, I guess it is today. My name is Greg LeGrande. I am the president of the Neartown Montrose Super Neighborhood Association. And I'm going to echo more or less what Kay has just said, but with some more emphasis on the secure need for us to meet with the individual neighborhoods that are, so that they have the opportunity to get their voice heard in a smaller unit of meeting as we had planned. The fact that the Metro University line will be cutting through bounding eight of our neighborhood associations within the 18 of all of Montrose, as it dissects the entirety of those. We have a lot of concern of isolating some of the neighborhoods due to some of the road right turn requirements for the Metro, and would surely looking forward to maybe some innovative ideas how to lessen that, and maybe some ways to loosen that up and maybe perhaps go around that. But I do appreciate the meeting. We had a meeting on the 20th at the Metro office of February, and I want to hold the Metro to the commitment to meet with our association officers at the various neighborhoods in Neartown Montrose. And thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. LeGrande, for your comments.
The next speaker is Kiala Harris Hilburn. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the Metro Board. Thank you for your time. I am a resident of the Scenic Woods neighborhood, which is neighboring to HCC. And basically, I just wanted to come on and put out my point of view as regards to the transit system that was offered to go down Homestead. I'm opposed to going down Homestead. I understand that it's critical for a thriving community, but going down Homestead, it'll be too much of a disruption to an already heavy flow of traffic. Not to mention the fact that we're about to have bike lanes put in down Homestead. We have to keep in mind that a lot of the residents that live directly on Homestead are elderly, and it's already pretty dangerous and hard for them to get in and out of their driveways. Cutting that 2-lane road down for a bike lane as well as transit system is going to cause all of that traffic to go into one lane, which is really going to disrupt Homestead. I listened and I heard someone mention, well, a couple of people mention Lockwood or Jensen opposed to Lockwood. I came on with the mindset that Lockwood would probably be the best bet. But after listening to other people speak and the residents that live in that area, I am totally opposed them disrupting that neighborhood. If there are other options that you all can consider, whether it be Jensen and Bennington, and it's been brought to my attention that Jensen is dangerous because it's a flood area. Too much rain and the waters can get high enough to cover a Metro bus. So what sounds like to me is the drainage system needs to be addressed. That needs to be addressed in order for us to figure out a better route. If Jensen is a better route, so it doesn't disrupt a historic community and it doesn't disrupt the main flow of traffic down Homestead, then maybe more options should really be considered. And maybe we're rushing something that shouldn't be rushed, because I do agree it's something that's needed, but we should do it right, and we should do it right the first time. Or else not only are the residents in this neighborhood going to be affected negatively, but we're always going to be coming back to the drawing board trying to figure out how to fix the issues that we created because we rushed the process. Thank you all for your time and listening to my point.
Thank you, Ms. Harris-Hilburn, for your comments.
Our next speaker is Alma Vasquez. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Alma Vasquez. I am a lifelong Easton resident since my parents migrated in 1989. I am here because I oppose to Lockwood Drive to be selected as a locally preferred alternative. I am a mother of two. My children currently attend Project Chrysalis Middle School, which is connected to Cage Elementary. The school is located in Ernestine Street in Leland, for those that don't know. I support public transportation and appreciate Metro for coming to the table, but personally, I'm not satisfied with the underpass, and I am much less not in support with the route being on Lockwood and Ernestine. The reason why I am opposed to the route being on Lockwood is that there are two main schools on Lockwood and Ernestine. Lockwood has Austin High School, and Ernestine has Project Chrysalis and Cage Elementary. I am very concerned of the safety of the children crossing from one side to the other side. During the morning, parents, these two streets are very congested. And so these streets are very, either parents are getting to the schools or people are driving through the streets to get to I-45 to get to work. On March 8th, on the Metro meeting for HCC, Felix Fraga, I mentioned this same comment, this same concern. And I never received, I submitted a written comment and I never received an acknowledgement. I did mention this comment in person, and I was told that maybe this would create, the traffic that was created would probably create the drivers to slow down, but that's not a solution. I asked Metro if they had spoken to Cage and to the Cage principal, and I was told yes, but I notified this same Metro representative that there was a new Cage principal. And so I was told that they were going to reach out. So we came across the new meeting with Councilmember Gallegos on March 21st. I invited the principal. The principal was in person. She attended, and Metro was able to get her information. But as of today, at 1:55, when I called the school, I requested to find out if Metro has reached out to the school, and per the school, Metro has not reached out to the principal, to me, to get the concerns from the school.
Excuse me, you have 30 seconds remaining.
I mean, just today, my mother picked up my children, and it's terribly raining outside, and there's 2 accidents just outside of the intersection of Lockwood and Ernestine. So creating Ernestine into 2-way would just create a lot of chaos. So this is why I'm opposed, and I would really ask for your consideration for another route. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vasquez, for your comments. Your microphone's not on. You were saying?
Sarah's on the line.
We'll revert back to folks.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Stacy Vaughn. I don't believe she is on the line. we'll go to the next speaker, Gloria Berdow. Okay. The next speaker is Bessie Harris. Good afternoon, Ms. Harris. You have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Please unmute your microphone. Ms. Harris, please unmute. Okay. Okay. We'll come back to Ms. Harris. The next speaker, Jean Tizano. It's also not on the line. The next speaker, Jean Washington. It's not on the line. And our next speaker is Carlise Prince. The next speaker is Kyle Rogers.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Rogers, you have 3 minutes to provide your comments.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to say that this entire process has not been done well from the beginning. The community outreach has been lacking. I am conflicted about the Lockwood one. We do need grade separation in the area, but I'm concerned at what cost it may come at. What I'm not conflicted about is that this seems to have been done to check boxes, these meetings that they've had in order, as someone said earlier, to get the easiest bureaucratic win. I don't think that the neighborhoods that this route is scheduled to go through have been effectively reached out to. That's why you're getting a lot of pushback right now. I would like to encourage the board to extend the deadline again in order to look at route alternatives, including Sampson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers, for your comments.
Our next speaker is Joseph Tijerina. Good afternoon.
Hi, everybody. Well, I've been writing and rewriting, and I came down to this. I got 3 topics: voting, and my wonderful congresswoman and councilman, and the Greater Eastwood Civic Center. What am I talking about? Group. Okay. I've been a precinct chair for a while and an election judge. And when I saw my name on a ballot, it's an impact. The word honorable precedes your name forever. So I love campaigns. And it's because my vote counts a heck of a lot, and I don't just give it away. I love my representatives that represent me in the city of Houston, the U.S. Congress, and the Harris County. So my second topic, besides voting, is precinct 26 and 27 will be impacted. There are about 9,000 votes there. And I support my Greater Eastwood Civic Center, civic group. What I came to talk about, the second topic, is my congresswoman. I've seen this happen to her twice, and it was Metro. We had a meeting, it was rushed, and the first one I saw was with the railroad. I just can't understand how we can disrespect a congresswoman and leave her out of the picture. Just really, I've seen it twice, and I'm not bringing this up targeting you, but I love her. She has worked very hard to get where she's at, and I just want her, and I want to say this publicly, I'm in support of her, and she is a very, very fine woman and needs more respect out of this board or the chairman or whoever, however this was set up last Monday. But I have seen it with the railroad, and enough's enough, and let's improve on that, on respecting her, and she's a great leader. My last comment is, again, I'm going to repeat this again, Eastwood Civic Group. I just support them completely. You know, I've met a couple of you guys at the meeting, and you are some fine people, at least for sitting here and listening to us. Wow. You are some good people. Now, I want y'all to take those words and put yourself in our place.
Excuse me, you have 30 seconds.
And I'm going to use every bit of 30 seconds to keep complimenting you guys and the people that put the show on Monday. You know who I'm talking about. David was the engineer and everything like that, but I just really appreciate y'all reconsider your vote and put yourself in our place if you can. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Tijerina, thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. I see you're prepared for the rain with your hat.
Okay. So we will go back to Ms. Gutierrez.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any public comments? Seeing none, have we confirmed those that were virtual had trouble unmuting and all of that? Is that? Please bear with us while we make sure those that had technical difficulties joining are given the opportunity to do so. Oh, online? Yeah. All right. Bear with us as we ask those that are online, if you would like to make a comment and had previously had technical difficulties, if you could hit your raise hand button, that tells us that you want to make a comment. We'll give it a couple of. Ms. Harris, looks like you are unmuted now, so we should be able to hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, this is Bessie Harris. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you so much. I've been living in the community for 55 years. And of course, you have to be here to understand what's going on. And I think I've been here long enough. I've seen a lot of changes, and I'm now seeing more. But my main concern is I believe that if the one-lane rail came down on Homestead Road, it would be totally overwhelming for the community, for the people that live here. And it would pretty much be a mistake because in the rain like this, Homestead Road and the cross streets are almost impassable, and most times they are for many hours before we can go anywhere. But my main concern is that it's a neighborhood on both sides, the north and the south of Homestead, of senior citizens, disabled, people from middle 70s all the way up to 100 years old. And it would be too overwhelming for them to maneuver. Number one, we're already going through something. All of the main streets are becoming through streets because there is so much developmental in housing around here. And it has not stopped. It is escalating more and more. And all of those main streets run directly into Homestead. They go straight across. And it would be problematic. It's already a lot of accidents here. And I don't think it would be beneficial at this time. Now, in about 20 years, I believe it would be, but not now. We just don't have enough of the right clientele living in here. And the other thing is, I would like to know what side of Homestead, the north side or the south side, that's being proposed for the rail to go down. because on my side of it, which is the north side, I believe, we're full. On the is Scenic Woods. On the other side is Fontaine Place. Further down Homestead is Northwood Manor. Off Homestead for as long as you can see, and it's quite a long road. It runs through 610 to 59, north and south, 59, 69. And I just don't think we would be able to embrace that at this time. So basically, that's my comment. And I'm hoping that everybody in the neighborhood would be considered so we can live comfortably and in peace as much as we can now with everything going on. But thank you so much for allowing us to participate and share our views today.
Thank you, Ms. Harris, for your comments. Just for clarity, there is no rail, and this is not running on Homestead. That was an idea that was floated, but in segment 5, this is on Lockwood. So thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, we have one more speaker online who is unidentified. Please unmute yourself and state your name for the record. Please unmute yourself and state your name for the record. Okay. Mr. Chair, there are no further speakers.
But unless my eyes are deceiving me, there are more than 10 numbers there. Looks like we've got international participants for community engagement at this special meeting. With anybody else? Thank you all for your comments, both those that are here in person and virtually. And I know the weather is a little tricky today, so be safe as you get home. I want to thank you all for your comments. Just wanted to address a couple of items before we go to item number 2. There have been some comments on whether the Lockwood alignment was just shown over the last couple of months. We've confirmed this. Since August 2019, the alignment on segment 4 and 5 has been shown on Lockwood. This is not something that just showed up in February or March of this year. Absolutely value the comments about sidewalk improvements, safety improvements, traffic improvements, road diet, drainage improvements, and along the entire 25.3-mile corridor, the net greenscape will be enhanced. There will be sidewalk improvements in conjunction with the City of Houston's new infrastructure design manual with safety buffers and sidewalks for bike and ped. Safety improvements for crossings, both pedestrian and car crossings. Traffic synchronization and signal priority where possible along the 25.3-mile corridor. All drainage improvements will be bringing things up to standard to Atlas 14, which is the new design criteria. All of the roadway will also get, for those that had comments about potholes, this is about doing the entire corridor from right-of-way line to right-of-way line, and also 2 lanes of transit. We know we can always get better at community engagement, and to our elected officials and to the community, it is our commitment to continue that process of community engagement. In fact, we've talked about, as we move into other stages of this project, this is not the end of the community engagement. This process continues, and some of the items along the lines of access to schools, making sure turning radius for big rigs, 18-wheelers, and all of that, it's our intent to have an advisory committee by segment, so there is a process of continuous engagement now through when the project may come to fruition. With that, I'm going to go to the next item, which is the reason for the special meeting, which would be moving to item number 2, and that would be Secretary Taylor, the chair of our Capital and Strategic Planning Committee. Okay. Sorry. I can't hear. Yeah. before we make any motion, we had been asked before we get to, hold on, Yuhayna, we've got to make a motion and second it before we can have a presentation from you so we can talk about what's going on. There was a request for us to look at if there is concern on our commitment on whether it's an overpass or an underpass. As I had mentioned earlier, Garcia had told folks at the community meeting publicly that we are looking only at the underpass as the option, and I'm going to take a brief second to talk to council on how we formally introduce that into how we make the motion. Okay. All board members in your packet, you all have received recitals that allow, that talks about this process. That recital will be amended to reflect that what we are talking about is an underpass, just to be absolutely sure that it is in writing and just not in conversations. So that recital will be forwarded to all board members upon the amendment being made. With that, I'm going to make a motion so for us to start the discussion process to move that the board adopt a resolution approving the staff recommendation for the proposed locally preferred alternative for the Metro Rapid University Corridor project as included in the meeting materials attached here to, and authorizing the president and CEO to complete the project development activities, including environmental studies under the National Environmental Policy Act process and requesting entry into engineering. Do I have a second? State your name, please.
Bob Fry, second.
Properly moved and seconded. With that, we're going to move into a presentation from staff on what is being discussed today.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and board members. My name is Yuhayna Mahmud, and I am the project manager for the Metro Rapid University project. Today, I will be asking you to adopt the locally preferred alternative for this project. I will talk a little bit about the Metro Next plan, this project, and the benefits of this project. Then our EVP of public engagement will come out and talk about the extensive public engagement that has been conducted. Then we'll discuss specifically the ask from the Metro Board and the community regarding the no overpass option. And then the next steps of engagement with the community. And finally, I will walk you through the LPA as is written in your documents. So this is the Metro Next Moving Forward plan. This plan is a 20-year plan that was adopted in 2019 and supported by almost 70% of the voters. This plan, as I said, is a 20-year plan. It is planning for the growth of our community to almost double to 10 million people by 2040. This plan that was presented to the voters in 2019 included the Metro Rapid University. It has 75 miles of Metro Rapid service, and 25 of those miles are proposed in this project. The Metro Rapid University project is 25.3 miles. It will bring fast, reliable transit to some of Houston's busiest and most densely populated areas with high minority, low income, and transit-dependent populations. It serves and makes an investment on 5 of the 10 complete communities designated by the mayor of the city of Houston, which are traditionally underserved communities. These are Alief Westwood, Gulfton, 2nd Ward, 3rd Ward, and Kashmere Gardens. It will help bridge the gap between equity and opportunity. When this project is complete, it will connect to all rapid transit and rail lines, and it will connect to 44 of our local service routes. It will provide a high-frequency, high-capacity network across the Houston area. In terms of project benefits, this project builds on existing plans that Houstonians have helped to inform and develop, but it also helps to implement these plans. Metro Rapid University helps support economic development by providing access to employment centers, jobs along the corridor, provide an affordable and reliable mobility option to all. There are 300,000 jobs along this corridor and 300,000 people within half a mile of this corridor. This project will provide fully accessible sidewalks, provide comfortable walking spaces, plant trees, and create a sense of place. It is really important that we look at a way to manage our traffic, as we're going to have twice the number of people in this region. So this will require that we use public streets and sidewalks creatively. The benefit of this project, like the chair mentioned, go beyond the rapid service. This project will provide more than 25 miles of improvements to the road, to the drainage system, bringing it to drainage standards, new wider sidewalks, ADA ramps, safe buffers between the street and the walking space so people feel safely walking our streets, improve landscaping, and we will provide first and last mile connections to all 44 stations along the 25 miles. In order to provide rapid service, this project will provide grade separation at all of our railroad crossings. And the benefits don't end there. The Metro Rapid Transit lanes will allow for emergency vehicles to use them in case that there's in peak time or heavy traffic, when there's an accident blocking the road, when trains are stopped on the track. An ambulance or a fire truck will be able to use the transit lanes to meet the needs of the community and keep them safe. Finally, this project will provide opportunities to placemaking, to create neighborhood identity. This project will weave through diverse communities that make up Houston, and through urban design and arts, this project will reflect the beautiful and diverse community along the corridor. Now, Ms. Tanya McWashington, Vice President of Public Engagement, will talk to you about the robust public engagement thus far. Sorry.
Good afternoon. We previously provided a summary of the public engagement activities on this project that began in July of 2021, but I thought I would take a moment and take a step back and highlight the public engagement activities that took place as part of the development of the Metro Next Moving Forward plan that actually began in 2017 through 2019. That's kind of the foundation of how we got to where we are today. The engagement plan was built around educating the public about our current services, future transportation needs in response to what Yuhayna just highlighted in terms of anticipated population growth and how our region is evolving. We were very aggressive in utilizing television, radio, print advertising. We initiated a call to action for the public to solicit ideas for Metro's next capital projects and service enhancements. And we held a listening tour throughout the Metro service area by hosting, as noted here, nearly 50 open houses and public meetings, in addition to establishing a community involvement and technical advisory committee, who were both very actively involved in the plan development. We presented the draft and eventually the final plan at over 300 community and business meetings, close to 100 community outreach events. We had a very active speakers bureau that both the Metro board and senior staff participated in, and we can attribute the success of the plan development to the active involvement and feedback that we received from the community. We communicated our commitment then to continuing our public engagement efforts when we began the actual development of the projects that came out of the Metro Next plan. The university project public engagement, as been noted previously, began in the summer of 2021. We started with mailing a multi-language project notification to over 100,000 households within the corridor. If you all can remember, that was right after the pandemic. We were coming out of the pandemic. We thought it was important to reconnect people with the Metro Next plan and what was actually approved by voters in 2019, and then began moving forward with holding stakeholder and community meetings before we held a virtual open house in December of 2021 that was the formal kickoff of the project. Our first public meeting series was in July of last year. We've had numerous community and business meetings since then, shared project information at community outreach events, additional direct mail, TV, radio, social media, all were used to raise awareness about the project. And why we think that things are moving the way that they should be, we've seen an increase in our webpage traffic significantly. We saw a 50% increase in attendance at the round of public meetings that were just held in February and March. And what was very important about this round of meetings is we wanted to actually communicate to the public what we heard from them. We wanted to share their feedback, what was received, the common themes, areas of concern, areas of interest, and most importantly, what Metro's corresponding actions were to what we heard from the community. Those efforts continue today. I think Yuhayna's going to come back up now and talk a little bit about the more recent community coordination that has occurred within Segment 4 and the actions and response to those concerns that we've been able to work with the community on.
Thank you, Tanya. So as more recently, in our previous meeting, I went through all of the comments from the different communities, and specifically this couple of weeks ago when you asked us and the community asked to look at the no underpass option. So since then, we have been engaging the community and the East Civic Association work group. They formed a work group and we've met with them a few times, and our elected officials also have held town hall meetings where we had the opportunity to discuss this project. So specifically, as to the opposition of the Harrisburg overpass, we went to the table with the community and we looked at the one option that allows for transit lanes and a pedestrian and bicycle path to go under, an underpass option. Because this is a smaller footprint, the flood concerns are minimized, and we had added flood control elements to the underpass to make sure that those are addressed. This option also allows enough clearance to allow the emergency vehicles to go under the underpass. And I will walk you through that in a moment, but in terms of following steps that we've committed to the community is to make sure that with this underpass option, we discuss with them and we get their feedback and input on the streetscape and how that street will look, and then the underpass itself and how it can be integrated into the network, into the fabric of the neighborhood, incorporating public art and urban design elements. We also are looking at the pedestrian and bicycle facilities, as well as a tree planting plan, which is very important to the community. So I'm going to walk you through this map. So the line that you see here that is red and yellow is Lockwood. And then the dash line in the middle, black, is the railroad itself. And then to the right of that, there's also another green line, and that would be the LRT, the current light rail at that location. A couple of things that I want to highlight here. Where the line turns yellow is where the underpass starts going under. Before that, on your left upper side where it's red is where there is a little bit of a raised condition, which is a berm, which would help with the flooding condition. I'll explain that a little bit further. One other item I want to highlight here is there is in the middle right there where the UPR crosses Lockwood. On the right side north, you see there's a detention pump and pumps, sort of like all the facilities that have to do with the detention pond and the pumps. And because this is a smaller footprint, we knew that we needed the detention pond, because it's a smaller footprint, we will be able to accommodate that there. This is just in this level of design, the only acquisition that we will need would be for that facility. At this point, we're just putting it there. Currently, it's an empty lot, undeveloped lot. The other item that I want to highlight here is that previously, in the previous condition of the overpass, we had an elevated station. So at this time that there's an underpass, the station would be at grade. So that's called the Harrisburg Station at their crossing with the LRT. Right now, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a cross-section and that is between McKinney and Walker. So here on your left corner, you see a cross section, and it corresponds to A on the figure on the bottom. And this is just to show that there is an elevated, a little bit of an elevated condition on the dedicated bus lanes and the path that we're proposing. And that is, if you see at the bottom, that height of that berm corresponds to the height of the existing UPR, which is also the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain. And so that is their first flood control measure in this design. And then the second is on your right, which is a floodgate, which would be on the other side by Texas Drive, so in between Texas and sort of where you see the C in there, there's a floodgate. And so that would be the second control mechanism. And this would be a 10-year flood protection, basically, that we would be then using that to closing that gate, the floodgate, so that when there's a rain event, there is no water that comes through that area. In case of a heavier rain event, that would be closed, and the BRT would have to go at grade. That is just one of the compromises in terms of operation, but we think it's worth it, obviously. And the when we have a higher rain event, we normally would at some point close some of our other services anyway, and so that would be treated the same way. In this, I'm just showing you a little bit of when it goes under, so it would turn yellow. That's the figure on the top corresponds to B in the bottom, and so that's when the rail's going, the bus is going under with the pedestrian path, and then we have vehicular access as well as pedestrian access at the surface as well. And then this is the last one. This is a condition almost at the right under the UPR. This just shows, there's going to be a pump system in the air. In terms of continued public engagement efforts, we will continue to engage HISD. We have engaged the previous principal at Cage Elementary and Chrysalis. I communicated with her after the last meeting, and we're making sure that we're going to get a meeting scheduled with her, as well as HISD, which we've been coordinating with, specifically in that section of Ernestine and Lockwood, because the city of Houston they were concerned. This is looking at Vision Zero, making sure that we are minimizing any or maximizing safety along the corridor. So we have looked at that specifically, and we had made some design treatments along that area that the city of Houston wanted us to make, and so we've worked with HISD closely in that area, so we'll make sure to reach out to the principal again. We will continue to coordinate with the city of Houston and traffic management strategies around the area. And this project, we will continue to commit to Justice 40. This Justice 40 is the Biden administration's initiative that says basically that 40% of the benefits of a project need to go to historically underserved communities. And as I've highlighted before, this project definitely does that. It meets the Justice 40 initiative, and we will continue to reach out to those communities and make sure that the communities are engaged in our process and our design moving forward. In terms of other next steps, we will need to complete the 30% design, including the underpass option, and complete our National Environmental Policy Act, updating that with the underpass option. I will now go through the alignment for the locally preferred alternative. This project is part of the MetroNext long-range plan approved by the Metro Board and voters. Staff would like to recommend this as the Metro Rapid locally preferred alternative. The 25.3-mile Metro Rapid corridor project starts at the West Chase Transit Center in the west and travels in Metro-owned right-of-way along the West Park Tollway and West Park Drive. At Interstate 610, the corridor transitions to West Park Drive and turns on Edlow Street, then turns on Richmond Avenue. At Spur 527, the corridor transitions to Wheeler Avenue. At Ennis Street, the corridor turns and then turns again on Elgin. At Interstate 45, the corridor transitions to Lockwood Drive. where it goes under the Union Pacific Railroad Galveston substation south of Harrisburg Boulevard, continues on Lockwood. At Tidwell Street, the corridor turns, and at Jensen Drive, the corridor turns onto Turner Drive to access the Tidwell Transit Center. We are requesting board action to approve staff recommendation for the locally preferred alternative for the Metro Rapid University Corridor as included in the Metro Next plan approved by voters in 2019, and authorize the President and CEO to complete activities in obtaining the National Environmental Policy Act clearance and requesting entry into engineering. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
I want to make a couple of comments before we go into discussion. Let me start with the overpass, underpass, because that was the topic of the discussion, of the majority of the discussion, the last time we sat down to talk about your presentation on the overall 25.3-mile corridor. We had approached this as that particular railroad crossing being one of the top 4 culprits in terms of the longest delays of rail cars blocking the intersection. And all along, we had been approaching this as if we are taking the BRT across, and of course, the BRT lanes have always been designed, thought of, conceptualized with the idea of taking police, fire, EMS for use of the BRT lanes. And then we thought we should at least take the bike and pedestrian, but frankly, we should take everybody because it's not right for anybody to be stuck between 2 roads for hours on end. So that's the thought process we had when we were looking at the overpass. Obviously, that means it's a wider overpass, a bigger bridge, and nobody wants a big bridge right in front of their house. Fully understand that. And then when we looked at the underpass alternative, it was again with the idea of taking everybody across. And when you have to take everybody across, the drainage impact, given that the railroad happens to be the southern end low point of the drainage area, that would require us to have upwards of 4 or 5 acres of detention. And if you're trying to minimize impact on properties along the corridor, within the subdivision, within the area, looking for 4 to 5 acres is not a good thing. And I'm glad we had sit-downs with the community, look at, no, we could do an underpass that allows us to get the BRT, get the bike and pedestrian safe crossing, so we're not having children or adults crossing under a parked railroad car. Want to give credit to 2 sets of folks, to the team, the engineering team that worked through the better part of spring break to come up with options for how we could make a BRT-only underpass feasible without having detrimental impacts on acquisition for detention ponds, property impacts along Lockwood. And credit to Mr. Lambert for looking at this and saying, hey, if we can take the BRT across, bike and pedestrian across, if we have a situation where we've got a railroad, a train parked for hours, at some threshold, we should be able to mobilize Metro Police to be able to get all vehicles to be able to use the BRT lanes and do it safely, both for the cars, general purpose lanes, general purpose cars, not general purpose lanes, cars using the BRT lanes, and also the BRT buses using those lanes, which is what we had proposed to the community going back sometime last week. So that's the thought process. What we were asked was, the overpass is a no-go. Can we look at an underpass? And we came up with this. I'll repeat what I said last time. We have the tough job of balancing 2 things. We know that the 25.3-mile corridor is a transformational project for the region. And we also have to make sure that residents, businesses, and communities along the way are not adversely impacted as well. So there's the 25.3-mile corridor. I mean, I think you mentioned this, maybe not in this particular presentation. It ties into over a dozen of our high-frequency bus routes, ties into all 3 light rail lines, ties into the innovation hub, ties into multiple management districts. Out at West Chase, southern end of the Galleria, Greenway Plaza, short of Midtown, connecting through the Red Line to downtown and to the TMC, 8 of our transit centers, and so much more. And of course, the reason is the University Corridor is 3 campuses of the Houston Community College system, the University of St. Thomas, Texas Southern University, and the University of Houston, with a current enrollment of over 100,000 and multiple high schools along the way. So we recognize the transformational nature of the project, and I think that is also why we are probably the only project, at least spanning the last several decades, where we've been included in the president's budget before the project development phase is complete. Right? That shows to us that we think it's a good project. Granted, there are lots of things to work out. We are less than 30, we are at 30% design. There's a long way to go in terms of what the eventual look and feel of this project will be. We are in the president's budget. That's a good sign for the future prospects of the project. But also something that we got to look back and say, what is the schedule that we've got to stick to in order for us to complete the project development phase, which has a 2-year window, with some wiggle room, possibly, but that's not a guarantee. In order for us to meet the September deadline for submission to, or for completion of the project development phase of the project, there are precursor steps that need to happen. And my understanding from multiple presentations that you all have made to us is we've got to submit a NEPA document, a National Environmental Policy Act document. We've got to request an entry into engineering. And for either of those 2 things to happen, it has to be preceded by a locally preferred alternative. And the FTA's guidelines for review of the NEPA document and the request for entry into engineering, the FTA's guideline is it needs to be completed by the project development phase that is September 2023, and their guideline is 6 months to review the NEPA document and the request for entry into engineering. Is that a fair statement? Can you all confirm that?
Yes, sir, it is. Yes. And it's written down in the FTA's guidance, January 2023.
Okay. So based on the new guidelines that they put out, and this is a schedule that we have, obviously we know the end point, and we got to figure out how we can get to that end point, and we have worked with them in talking to them about how we will get to that end point. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that was the basis for us to consider the LPA back in March, because that would have given us the 6 months to review the NEPA document and the request for entry into engineering. Correct. And we're already past that, obviously. We're in April, but we've been talking to the FDA to see how we can, hey, this is a collaborative process. This is not like we're going to drop a document on them that they've not been involved with over the last, frankly, more than 2 years, right? There's a conceptual development phase and then the project development phase. Correct. That both need to happen, and it needs to end by September 30th. So that is part of the time frame impacts that we'll have to live within, right? There is an end date, but there are a bunch of things that need to get done to get us to the end date, right? Going back to the 25 mile, I know I've said this a bunch of times, and not to monopolize, give me 30 seconds and I'll stop. There is a road diet being proposed so that we are minimizing impacts along for residents along the way. We've already talked about safety, traffic, drainage, and all of those improvements along the corridor. We've made a commitment to say, to the extent we can, we're not going to impact trees. And this is not, I'm not talking to segment 4, I'm talking to the 25.3 mile corridor. And net, our goal is to have more green space, bring in urban design concepts early on into the process. So this is not a concrete infrastructure project, but taking into account how you make it attractive for folks that may want to consider using transit. One other item, and I know we've had multiple alternatives, particularly on segment 4. We've shown Lockwood as the preferred alternative, not the adopted preferred alternative, but as the alternative on all of our materials going back to 2019 that it's on Lockwood, but we've looked at multiple other alignments. Could you speak, so to me, those alignments were looked at when we were developing the concept of Metro Next in 2018. They were once again looked at during the conceptual development phase, which preceded the phase that we are in, which is the project development phase. And they were again looked at during the project development phase. And all along the way, we've made submittals to the FTA during the conceptual development and the project development. Because we made a submittal last August 2022 interim in the 2-year process. Speak to why we came up to Lockwood. I know there are concerns that have been expressed, but to me, transit is about ridership. You take it where there are people. If you take it to places where it's desolate or industrial, there is nobody riding the system. And I know there were comments about, oh, you're trying to work towards the rating system. But the rating system is a function of ridership. The transit's about ridership. Could you speak to how we arrived at Lockwood and what the pluses and minuses were on other corridors?
So during MetroNext, we look at 3 different alignments that served, and basically we were looking at making sure that we serve the universities. We're looking at a direct connection to the Tidwell Transit Center, which provides, there's a regional connector there already and several routes. And in the route that Lockwood or any of the other routes, looking at opportunities to be able to serve other transit centers so that there would be rapid connection to those. One of the alignments that we looked at was Wayside. Wayside is a freight corridor. And so if we wanted to provide bus rapid transit and make sure that people were successfully riding and safely riding, it was a conflict that we saw there between truck traffic, which is designated by TxDOT in the city of Houston as a freight corridor, and that direct connection. So that was something that we sort of moved away from that alignment. We've looked at through the later efforts, so then we looked again at some of those corridors just to make sure, because that exercise was done in 2017. So we looked at 4 corridors and plus one that the community brought up in the last meetings that we talked about. So we looked at Hirsch, Jensen, and you might need to help me here, Shri, because I'm trying to go by memory. Hirsch, Jensen, Scott was the one that the community looked at. Lockwood, and Homestead.
Yeah.
I think you covered it.
Okay. So as we were looking at those, we were looking at the most direct and the one that serves the most. Lockwood, for example, has the most connections to local service. We have worked with developments in the area. There's coming development. We've worked with the development done by the Buffalo Bayou Partnership, which is a 26-acre project that has 350 multifamilies only in the phase 1 part of the development, mixed income, mixed use development, making sure that there's a station that is placed there. So we have worked looking at what developments are coming along those. In terms of the Jensen alignment, some of the things that we looked at is right away and what impact we would have on public properties and private properties. And so Jensen, for example, has several miles of, the Jensen has several miles of 60-foot right-of-way versus Lockwood, which was mostly 80-foot and 100-feet right-of-way. So that means that if we went on Jensen, it would be an impact to private properties that we would have to acquire businesses and acquire homes to be able to provide the same level of service that we would on Lockwood. The Jensen alternative that we looked at also goes through Lockwood. It goes on Lockwood all the way to navigation, that we would need to turn on navigation and perhaps disturb the esplanade that they were in front of that NINFAS, original NINFAS navigation. And so the reason we didn't look at anything that was not going on navigation or on Eastwood is because then that takes us to the feeder road. And then that would not be, we can't provide service really on the feeder road to take us to all these other alternatives. So those are some of the challenges and some of the reasons why we've looking at Lockwood. Lockwood also, of all those 4 alternatives that we looked at, has the highest ridership as 2019. We're about 77% back to service. The service is higher. The ridership is higher on the Lockwood alternative, and we're not looking at this project for today. This is a 20-year project, right? It's like looking at 20 years from now, and we are looking at all those connections and all that ridership, and so that's where we're looking at all the opportunities and the development that is happening in the area.
So I heard that the Jensen alignment that was looked at, if we, 2 options, either you go on the highway feeder, which is not a great place to run transit anyway, or the other option was to still be along this segment of Lockwood that we've been discussing the last couple of meetings. So the Jensen alignment still takes us there, and once it jogs over to Jensen, dramatically drops in ridership, and because of the narrower right-of-way, would actually have more impact to private properties along the entire length of Jensen, that is a 60-foot right-of-way.
Not the entire, but there's several
The
miles.
portion of it that is
yes,
60-foot right-of-way. That's what
yes.
I meant. Sorry. Already lost my train of thought. I had one other item, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. Oh, there was a comment that was made about high schools. To Yuhayna's point, not to speak for anybody, but for myself, at my age, I'm not going to change my driving patterns. We're really building this for the next generation of Houstonians so we can get folks that might be 15, 20, 25, 30 years old into the habit of considering transit so that they may continue to use it when they get to my age, our age. And that's how you move the needle on, if you're going to double the population in the region, and you got a 26-lane highway, can be 50 lanes, but if 5 to 10% adopt a different mode, and that's the basis of how we look at potential ridership, current ridership and potential ridership, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. And again, thank you for all the work that you all have done. I know there's been a lot of moving parts, and to everybody whose spring break plans were impacted, thank you for putting the region before your spring break plans.
Thank you, thank you. I just had a comment, really, is that I've been thinking about this. It's really been on my mind because, I'm from the East End. I grew up really right there on Lockwood and Jefferson. I went to high school there. So I was really excited about this BRT going down Lockwood, having, ridden public transportation, and my mother rode it all her life. However, when in the last 2 weeks, have heard some of the public comments, particularly the one at the town hall, it gave me a little pause because there are a lot of concerns. And then when Commissioner Garcia said earlier that this project is too critical to have a divided community, it concerns me. It just really does. And so for that reason, I know there's a time, I totally understand, we've got to move forward to meet that September the 30th deadline, but if there's any way for us, and Shri, I'm sure you can do this, where we can give a pause, at least 2 to 4 weeks, where we can go back to the community, re-engage, and make sure, because what I've heard consistently throughout is we were lacking in community engagement. For whatever reason, there's quite a few people out there that feel that way. So I feel like it would help us if we re-engaged, said a lot of these things that you're saying that I think are extremely important. And what I've seen from that last meeting is when we saw all those concerns in the community and it came back, you especially, and Tom Lambert came up with a really good plan that was so much better, and the staff. And so I feel like what I would like to see is us do the same thing, because I feel this is divided, and I don't feel comfortable in having a vote when I see a divided community like this. I would prefer that we had more people on board and more of the community supportive of this. And the one last comment I wanted to make, another thing that I think is extremely important, because Congressman Garcia mentioned it, is that the Biden White House, one of the things that they have on their priority list with all of these projects is that a community of color is not adversely impacted. And there's still some questions around that, and I would like more answers that it is not adversely, does not adversely impact the community, minority community.
Dr. Frieden?
If I may, please, thank you. I have a couple of questions. Is there anything that prevents us from completing the 2 tasks that you described that are necessary to have before this action is taken, and then at that point in time, having had the opportunity to hear more comments for the next 2 months, submit this particular action?
I've asked that question, but I'm going to defer to the experts. My understanding is all of the documentation in the NEPA and the request for entry into engineering is a function of what corridor we are on, right? And to Shri or Tom.
I think it's a logical sequence there. You, on like it was mentioned before, you need the locally preferred alternative that selects the route, as in which streets that Yuhayna pointed out we're on, and you do the NEPA document for that particular route. So that's how the logic is set up, and then after the NEPA document's done, you will request for entry into engineering, which basically talks about the design and the construction cost.
I understand, thank you. So what would prevent us from doing the NEPA document, et cetera, with a prospective route, submitting those documents, getting them through their 60-day procedures, and then going in after all that's near the time the deadline for the LPA is, and taking action on that. And if it turns out that we're not confident in the route we've put forward in the NEPA, we ask to amend the NEPA and move forward with the revised route.
Couple of comments on that, and again, you all please correct me. 6-month review process for the NEPA document, and if the September is the deadline, we are already under 6 months. And the NEPA document is based on an LPA vote. Again, I'm glad you brought this up. This agency has had in the past, if we find out that there is a better option, we can amend the LPA at a future point in time. It's happened before. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it has.
Those of you all that have been, I've viewed that part of it as a private citizen, not sitting in this building. So I recall that the LPA has been adopted on our light rail projects and that have been modified when we found better solutions. And that's what we're trying to get to is, without adopting an LPA, you cannot submit a NEPA document. The NEPA and adopting an LPA does not prevent us to continue the community engagement. And if we do find a better option than Lockwood, which our folks have looked at, but you're right. I mean, the underpass, we thought we needed to take everybody across. Community said, no, just BRT is fine. Nothing prevents us from continuing to engage and find better alternatives. The LPA can be modified, but if you don't have an LPA, you cannot submit a NEPA document.
So
the document is for that particular vote.
I understand. Is there anything we can do with the motion today to clarify for the public that this is a prospective LPA, a prospective route? Now, I understand that it is, but before I feel confident that I can represent it in the public, I'd like for it to say in the motion what our intent is to move forward with some of these other requirements the federal government has to get to this project that's going to take 2 years to finish. So we get that underway, but we basically reserve the right to make improvements in the plan before it's officially adopted.
I think the terminology is LPA, but we always have the ability to continue to refine, and if we have a better solution, take it to the FDA with a better solution.
I believe that has happened in the past. I've not been involved in a project of that type, but I believe that's a possibility. But I'd defer to the board about what language you'd like to put in there.
Sure, Sudani, please correct me. I think what the FDA needs to see is an LPA, a NEPA document, and an entry into engineering. I don't think the FDA has the ability to call it a prospective LPA, but the FDA does understand if you want to go and modify it in the future. You have the ability to modify it. They still have the right of yes or no, but and I think that's the thing that is lost in this is we are at 30%. Nothing in this prevents us from continuing the conversation with the community to make it acceptable and putting in things that will make it acceptable, that is respectful of preserving community characteristics and so on and so forth.
Well, I mean, in many respects, this is a contingency LPA that we're being asked to approve here. But the public, as advertised, sees this as the community's preferred option, and I'm not sure that's representative here.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure I'm deferring to the experts because I want to make sure we're open and transparent, and I do not know the answer to this question. Mr. Leard, do you have any sense on this from HNTV, who's our project director? He may have more knowledge, and I want to make sure we're being open, transparent, and honest about what our responses are.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is David Leard. I am with HNTB. I'm the program director for the program management consultant team for the Metro Next program. The question at hand is the LPA decision today does identify the route. That step is necessary for us to move forward with the NEPA document and the engineering work. If at a later date the Metro Board decided to change the LPA, that would then change the project, and whatever the alignment were at that time, the project would no longer exist. We would need to go back and start over again. Yeah, and we'd be able to carry forward our work, but if we dramatically change the alignment off of what these 3 routes we've already talked about today that are really the only options in this segment, one of them that already uses Lockwood, the other one that goes over to Wayside by the port is not really a viable option. So I want to make sure that we're clear. The LPA decision today does tie us into the route that we're going to do NEPA on and 30% design.
And the confidence that we have in the route is based on, here are the 3 options, and from a ridership point of view, from a property right-of-way point of view, 60 foot is not enough to run BRT down the middle of Jensen. The impact to properties along Jensen that have a 60-foot right-of-way, and directly tied into the rating for the project. The Federal Transit Administration's rules, not guidelines, require the project rating to be medium or higher in order to be eligible for funding. Fair statement?
Correct.
And if the ridership drops and if the rating drops below medium, doesn't matter what we do, it is not eligible for funding. And the 25.3 mile corridor is, because we can't afford to build this project purely on local funding. And as it stands today, the $1.5 billion 25 mile long corridor is at 60% federal matching funds. That could change. So that's what's at stake. If he cannot move forward, then we're not in line to receive the funds. The funds, from everything that we are hearing, we started off with the infrastructure bill, but it could potentially get smaller in terms of the dollars available. And if there are 5 other projects that rank higher than us and are ahead of us in the pipeline, we could end up being 6th. We might as well be the 60th. We could lose out on the potential funding for the university corridor if we don't get the NEPA, get the LPA, get the process completed. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but that's what's at stake here.
Yes, sir. Everything you're saying is correct.
So to summarize, I guess for me personally, I feel like we really have 2 options. We could vote, and this LPA, the route cannot change. Maybe the design can change, but the route cannot change. Correct?
The route changes if we suddenly find a new alternative that will rate well, will have the ridership, will make the sense to do, take it along that route. Then we would have to go back and start the process from the LPA stage, from the NEPA stage. Or do you go to 0?
Say for example, you just change the alignment from Eastwood north. We'd have to redo all the NEPA work, all the design work, reevaluate the project. So half of the work would need to start over again.
Which is very difficult. I mean, it's almost a very difficult process. So we have to either decide now to move forward or delay it so that we can get more community input. And it seems to me that if we get more community input, all the things that you're saying is that Lockwood is the best route. We need to just do a really good job in explaining to the public why Lockwood is the better route. I mean, those are really the only 2 options.
I think you put it exceptionally well. Mr. Trevino has been in line. I think I
I'm
cut him
sorry.
off before Dr. Frieden started, so.
I guess, Mr. Leard, I had a question for you, sir. It's kind of tying back to what Dr. Frieden said. Can we proceed with the project development phase and the NEPA phase with the understanding that it's Lockwood until we have further discussion with the community to better convey why Lockwood is the chosen alignment? Or does a vote actually have to occur for us, for the staff and you to proceed with those two documents?
So to go back to the, I'm gonna answer your question, but I need to kind of back up and provide some context. So the standard process for moving through the environment for the request to enter engineering is that the LPA, NEPA, 30% design, and everything else be completed 6 months prior to making that request. Because of the Justice 40, what this project does for Justice 40 and all the other benefits of it, the FTA is working with us, understanding it's a complicated project, and they've already reduced some of those requirements on us. So to delay the LPA vote means, from an FTA perspective, that they do not, that this board does not have confidence that the project is going to move forward with. And until they would, they would lose their incentive to provide us the support that they've been doing so today, because they'd have no confidence that the board would ultimately approve it, and their time and resources would be wasted.
So within that 24 months, the FTA could make a decision that the project does not have local support and pull their funding? I mean, because we have a 24-month time we have to finish this process. So you're saying within that 24 months, FTA can remove their support of a project if we delay this vote?
They can, or they can require us to do additional environmental work, like raise the, right now we're at a certain level. They could require us to raise the level of the environmental documentation for significant public outreach, for push, and other reasons. But right now, if we move forward, they know that we have the support of the board and the project is viable. If we continue to delay the LPA process, the project drops down on their radar.
Okay, so and I don't want to undermine it. We have correspondence that the Congresswoman brought over that clearly the correspondence says the internal deadline of April 30th is staff driven. We understand why the 6 months. It also says that FTA has capacity to extend the deadline if requested. Can you provide clarity on that? Because that counters to what the board is hearing today.
So the FTA, for what the guidance says, and I'm not reading it directly, but the guidance basically says if you have unforeseen conditions that require you to move the date back, you can do so for a specific reason and to address specific items for a specific timeline. All those are very, very specific. If you then you pull, basically you're asking them to move the process back. If in that time frame you do not resolve the issue, then you would fall out of project development. If the project were to, then the board would take action later after you'd fallen out of project development, all the funds spent prior to being put back in the project development would no longer be eligible for reimbursement.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. Would a divided community be a sustainable item, and then safety of two schools?
So, sir, there are several schools along this project. We'll have worked with them and will continue to work with them and engage with the new principal at this school. We had 3 meetings, I believe, with the prior principal, and we will continue that level of outreach. As the project advances, we will continue to outreach to the students, who will then outreach to the parents as we move forward in construction. So safety is the top priority for this project, as it is for Metro. Secondly, the question about the community, and I think someone asked, one of the board members mentioned and kind of alluded to environmental justice and an adverse impact on the Hispanic community. We have completed our draft environmental justice report. There is no adverse impact from that perspective. The project is, we're treating Richmond as far as taking a lane away, just like we're treating Lockwood, and the entire project is being treated as the same project. The overpass issue is because of the railroads, right? So the fact that the overpasses and stuff are identified in this part of the segment, there are long issues that have been pushed back the development of this community for a long time. As the chairman articulated, We have developed an alternative that for this specific location could help to alleviate that issue.
The railroads have blocked my community for years.
Yes, sir.
And have cut the crossing areas off where we can't get across, and you'll see trains sit there. I know what they're going through in that community as being mayor of the city of Katy. So I understand what you're doing there, and I think that's good. I just want the safety factors and the community to not be divided in any way, and the businesses. We've been through a process at Harrisburg before where this has taken place, and it's not a happy situation when you destroy livelihoods and a community that has historical value. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Elder, I think the connectivity across Lockwood, the urban design principles that'll get embedded into this early on, I think helps alleviate all of that, and I'm glad you brought up safety. Safety is going to be paramount for anything that we do, not just this project, anything that we do as an agency. I think Ms.
Yes. You said adverse, did you say adverse effect? I want to use the right term. Is that when you measured? Okay. You said are you doing that by segment, or are you doing that for the entire line?
The entire project.
So is it weighted equally all the way through? Or are you required to do it by segment?
Yeah, for environmental justice, the basic, kind of the layman's analysis of environmental justice is that you're treating everyone equally. That there's not an adverse, that you're not going through a neighborhood and taking several homes from a low-income or historically disadvantaged community, and you're not doing that somewhere else.
So you're treating West Chase and Tidwell the same?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm a bit with Board Member Morales. I'm concerned about community input, and I will say, though, that when we sat through 48 speakers in the last meeting, I thought they were speaking with one voice. Now I'm hearing that they're not. And I don't know if we're delaying how we could pull the community together to speak with one voice. Is there one voice? That is probably my biggest concern. Do we have it yet? And I don't know if delaying this a week, a month, a year, if we'll ever get to one voice. I will tell you, I think that Segment 5 needs some more attention, just community outreach. And I hope that we don't overlook Segment 5 as well during this process. I don't know quite how to say anything except to say, if we're not doing a good enough job with community outreach and engagement, it sounds like we have, maybe we need to double down and do even more. I don't like to see neighbors not agreeing because y'all have to live together. I don't like to see projects like we had at Harrisburg where we went ahead with a project and then we had nothing but trouble the entire time. And it was because of the way the project laid out. It was going to be one thing, it ended up being another. I hope we can overcome those issues now before we get started. I think that you all have done a great job with community engagement with recently. I hope you will continue to do so. I'm sorry for the community that you all are divided, but we have to make a decision, it sounds like today.
Director Fry, sorry.
Well, there's a couple of things here. One, there's been community engagement going on this thing forever. And every time you come up with a deadline, you get somebody else coming up to say something. Probably, and we learned some good lessons yesterday on how we can do community involvement better, and how you can get some good ideas out of it once you've got people's attention. But once you've got this laid down, once it's on the books, people know they got to live with it. Then you go back to them and you make it work, just like we made it work with this East End group. Once they know it's coming and it's on their radar, you can go in and work with them and be sure you come up with a solution that works for them. So I seconded the motion. I say we vote on it and we work real hard. Once it's laid on line, that we get the people that are on the line behind it, and we can do that.
Yeah, I want to say to Board Member Lewter's point, right? The community challenged us last time to say, come up with an underpass. I think it's beyond a demonstration of good faith that we actually came up with something that solved a problem to me, the problem is not just the BRT, the problem is that of a blocked road that's blocked for hours every day at rush hour in the morning and in the evening and during the day. So I think that shows that we are willing to not just listen, but actually take action towards making it better. And that's how we came up with the underpass. And Terri, thank you for recognizing that our folks stepped up to the plate and got it solved. In the case of Lockwood, we've looked at the other options, and when we got to the underpass, overpass became an underpass. Now it is, let's get off of Lockwood. I don't think there is at least with the railroad, you could go above or below. We've looked at Jensen, we've looked at Wayside, we've looked at Homestead on the northern portion of Lockwood. There don't seem to be good alternatives that will help a transit ridership project. Having said that, there are things that we could continue to improve. Again, I think to Mayor Fry's point, we can always improve on community engagement, and ideas are always welcome on how we do that. Right? It's to see how we can make sure that the way we build this project, I'm not closing the door on looking at other alignments. I know David said we would have to move back. But based on the information that we've seen over the last several years, this is also about having confidence in our staff's ability to make a recommendation after they have looked at it for 4 to 5 years. They live in this world. They know what's buildable, what is not, we've learned from our Harrisburg experience. They know what the FTA requirements are, whether it's schedule or ratings or any of those. And that's the reason I'm struggling with. We've made progress to, I would say, jump the line and be 1 year ahead in the process of being included in a budget. Again, it's a very small part of the overall project, but it's a good sign. And if we put the ability to deliver on this by September in jeopardy, this is an LPA for the University Metro Rapid Corridor that spans 25.3 miles. I said this at the last meeting. I'll say it one more time. This is not an LPA for Lockwood at Harrisburg. Right? Equally important, don't get me wrong, but the LPA is for the 25.3 mile corridor. While we continue to see if we can refine things to make it work better for everybody, every resident, every business, every community along the entire corridor. This is allowing us to move forward to meet the September deadline because there are multiple steps that need to get done, but does not close the door at all and should not close the door at all on continuing to work with the community, continuing to look at options. If we find out there is a dramatically different option that none of us has looked at, whether it's folks in the building or in the community, and we come up with it, yeah, we should step back and start the process again, because at the end of the day, the transformational project is not for 5 years and 10 years, it's 50 years. So if we do find a better option, we should look at it. We're not closing the door on that, but in my mind, jeopardizing the ability for this project to meet the overall schedule and funding gives me pause. And also, challenge to find overpass versus underpass. We worked to get that, and that's where I am.
So, Mr. Chair, may I just add one quick thing? I do want to say that the staff really, really stepped up on this. I mean, I was really surprised that you all were able to make a turn this quickly and do the design work and get something back as quickly to us. And if we didn't say it enough, I want to say thank you.
I'm just going to share some thoughts as I listen, and I don't even know if this is possible, but I hope the community hears, and I hope you see that we are listening. There is a lot of pause on this board. Right now, I think it's pretty easy to see that we're not synced on this because we care, because we want to give you something that's going to promote growth, promote collaboration, promote neighborhood excitement. The way I think about this is we want to get a university corridor. We want to get that. I don't know that there's going to be a utopian route. I don't know that that exists. If it doesn't exist on Jensen, if it doesn't exist on Homestead, if it doesn't exist on Hearst, and it doesn't exist on Lockwood, I don't know how we include segment 4. I don't know how we weave you into the route and still make sure that there's equity. I personally don't feel prepared to vote in favor of it, but at the same time, I understand that we have to get something by some timeline. If we delay it, if we say let's go back to the drawing board and just clear the paper, erase it, and start over, there is a good likelihood that the funding that the federal government is contributing, which is upwards of $150 million, may not exist. And so now we're talking about an escalated market and a lack of funding and possibly not getting anything. And now then the conversation at the board would be, we've waited for 2 decades. Now we're gonna have to wait until we can drum up the excitement and get the project started again. And so I don't see a win. I want to accommodate the community. I think this entire board wants to accommodate the community. I don't know if that is, and here's a thought, since we're just talking and this is community, maybe there's a delegation from segment 4, because there are a lot of interested people, but maybe there's a delegation of 5 to 7 people or so, and you come and you roll up the sleeves with the Metro team and come up with something. But the short of it is we don't have a lot of time, and we have to do something, or there's a good chance you lose it all. And so I don't know where that breaking point is, but we want to work with you. But simply saying going over it doesn't work, going under it doesn't work, we want to be included, well, we clearly can't go around it. I don't know what the other option is. And so if you have an option, I would love to hear that. And that's not to be facetious at all. I'm just saying we don't know what the right answer is, but we do know that we want to do what's right for the entire 26-mile corridor. And that's my thought.
Troi, thank you for articulating what I've been struggling to say exceptionally well, because it's not an easy decision for us, right? We did look at one option from the community that was to go on 3 sides of the rectangle instead of on Lockwood, and that would have added upwards of 2 miles on a 25-mile corridor, almost 10% additional run time, which then the FTA looks at run time, predictability, reliability, so on and so forth. The other thing that I would say is while the current proposal is for $150 million, what if we continue at that 60% funding? What is at stake is 60% of the $1.5 billion project, which is significantly more than $150 million coming to the region. It is not close to, it is $900 million, which is what we hope the federal component of it would be, somewhere in that range. Yes.
I just wanted to say, Board Member Taylor, that I really appreciate your words. I really and truly do. I wish we would have had this dialogue months ago, because my only concern is not that I don't think that we should go down Lockwood. I just feel like there's a disconnect with the community, and I'm like you, Board Member Lewter, I don't think we're going to ever get anybody, everybody on board on the same page. But what I would like for the community to say is that we had effective communication, and that's why I was hoping for a delay, because I want them to say we had lots of meetings. We didn't agree, but there was effective communication, and that's not what I'm hearing. And that's my only concern, but I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
And if I may, based on what I've heard, right, it's a struggle. Yes, we want everybody along the 25-mile to be perfectly happy with it. That is utopian, yeah. I think we still want to be able to explain, engage, as to how, if we have not done it already, we'll try harder. That's our commitment. And we'll continue to work on things that need to happen, ability to cross, green space, park space. One of the ideas that the team at Metro came up with was, if we build an underpass, there needs to be a pump station. If there needs to be a pump station, can that be green space above? Can there be a Metro Police storefront there? because if we are relying on them to help with cars being able to use that underpass when the railroad cars are blocking it for hours on end, it's good for MPD to be near. I think we had a comment today saying we need more MPD folks on the Green Line. I think we are more than interested in making this right, doing this right. But we've got to get started at some point because there is a different kind of a deadline that we are being faced with. So not an easy decision by any stretch of the imagination. Are there other comments, questions? Dr. Frieden has one.
Chair, thank you. And I concur, Mr. Taylor. Appreciate your comments. We know that the neighborhood served by this transit line is disproportionately disabled, disproportionately aging, and also from an economic standpoint, disproportionately disadvantaged. And I honestly believe that the infrastructure developments that will occur along this passageway, the improvements, what we know from our polling in Houston of people in that community is that people with disabilities, people with mobility impairments, older people and younger people often are not able to get to their doctors not because there's not a bus over there, but because they can't get to the bus. They're not able to get out and get a job. And certainly not one clear over by the Galleria, where there's lots of good jobs. The improvements that will be made contingent with this project are remarkable. And I would point out also that the underpass, and I ask you this question, and the underpass will not only have access to bicycles who will never again be stopped by the train, people on foot who are trying to get to a neighbor's house and they can't get through the trains, or people with disabilities who are rolling their wheelchairs from one side of the tracks to the other. That's phenomenal. And to know if I had a home on the wrong side of the tracks when it got on fire and the fire truck was on the other side of the tracks, they'd get to see me now with the underpass. So I understand there are reasons why if I lived in that community, might be questioning this initiative and the impact on my community, but I would also be able to look at the advantages and opportunities that this might give me and my family in the future.
And the sidewalk improvements, safety improvements, drainage improvements, and traffic improvements, and universal accessibility improvements are along the entire 25.3-mile corridor. It's uniform across. It's not one segment looks different than the other. So here's any other comments?
I mean, I know that we got a lot of criticism on not criticism, a lot of feedback on the community outreach. I just want to make note that the 24-month timeline that we're held by FTA, there's a consequence to that, and it limits the amount of input that you can receive and be able to convey. So, I know the team works really hard. Just want to make sure that, look, we do understand that 24 months, what we heard today, is rigid. It doesn't allow you constant feedback with the community. That did occur throughout, but once the decision for Lockwood was made, it's after a thorough review, and your timeline to go back to the community is dictated by that timeline and how long you can do it. So we do know that, we're aware of that, and we'll just, now that we hopefully get past this point, we can start reevaluating what we do and re-engaging.
And again, the refinement to what's being done here, including the utopian solution, if there is one, this does not close the door on that. So this just allows the existing process to continue. And that's the way I see it. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to, the motion's been moved and seconded. I've had a presentation, a discussion. I'm going to read it one more time. I move that the board adopt actually, you know what, I should ask. The heavy lifting on the university BRT corridor is actually done by Director Taylor's committee. The Capital and Strategic Planning Committee is where this comes through. Before I do that, I want to ask if you, as the chair of that committee, would you want to read the motion again, or should I just continue reading the motion?
You should continue to
All right.
read the
Happy to
the
do
motion.
that. All right.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a quick question, just a point of order?
Sure.
Did we amend that
No, I'm
before
gonna
or
read it.
after the second? I just couldn't remember.
No. So that's the reason I'm reading it one more time.
Okay,
Because
thank
I
you.
talked
Thank
about for concerns on, hey, can you document the underpass?
Okay, just
I've
wanted to be
mentioned
sure.
it
I was just.
before, so that's the
lot
reason
of-
I'm reading it one more time.
A lot of
Yeah.
water's gone under my bridge. Thank you.
I do have one more
Yeah,
question.
certainly, yeah.
One more question. Is it even practical? Is it practical that we could do a design charrette? And I know I'm saying specifically to these areas where the community is invited. We roll up our sleeves. For those that don't know what a design charrette is, it's where we put the design on a board and everybody gets stickers, and you literally can come up with solutions. You can list problems as well, ideally problems with solutions, and we do that, and it's a collective conversation where every comment is welcomed. And there is no special board meeting already set for the next morning. It's, let's come up with something. Once the engineers and the architects say, yes, that's plausible, it can happen, then we walk away. It may not be perfect for every resident, but it's something where you see, these are all the options. This is the best case scenario to still include segment 4. And then we set another meeting to get the vote where everyone on the board feels that we've exhausted all due diligence, and if we're going to get something, this is the best solution. Is that still an option to do that and still maintain schedule? Now, that might mean that there's not enough notice, in the real, maybe it's Tuesday of next week, and the notices go out this evening, but at least you have a seat at the table where you're rolling up your sleeves and you can give all the comment and feedback and solutions, and we exhaust it all. At least that way, the community members can go back to their neighbors and say, look, I was a part of it. And we looked at this, and you go down to 15 different things and say, guys, this was the best solution. I think that would give at least me more peace about moving forward.
So in my mind, the design charrette is something that is an ongoing process. We had a 30% design. There are going to be lots and lots of design details to get worked out. But in terms of the alignment routes, you all were in those meetings. Tom, you were in that meeting. We've actually had that short notice, deep dive sit down with the community, not once, but twice last week, which is how the underpass concept even came up. The proposed other corridors were also discussed. Again, not everybody is going to agree on our rationale, but to go on the feeder and 3 sides of a rectangle to avoid one side of the rectangle, that's a 10% increase in the total run mileage. And what does that do for time of travel and things like that? Those are things that the FTA directly looks at for rating. So I think the design charrette definitely, that's the whole concept of the advisory committee by segment. Let's get folks that can come in and provide the input. We'll be able to, some of them will be fantastic ideas that nobody in the building thought about. Some of them may not be feasible. We don't know that. But that's something that we owe the community, and I think we will commit to doing. So that's where we are.
Well, with that in mind, I would be open to making the motion.
Okay, all right. So
Okay,
motion's
go
already
for it.
made. I'm just restating that. I'm going to restate the motion that there was an additional recital included in the preamble to the resolution regarding the underpass in response to the community and Commissioner Garcia's and Councilmember Gallegos' request. That was the top item that we had gotten from the community as no overpass, find a way to get an underpass. So the motion with that amendment reads that the board adopt a resolution approving the staff recommendation for the proposed locally preferred alternative for the Metro Rapid University Corridor project as included in the meeting materials attached hereto, and authorizing the president and CEO to complete project development activities, including environmental studies under the National Environmental Policy Act process, and requesting entry into engineering. That was the motion made, seconded by Mayor Fry. Troi, since you wanted to make the motion, if you wanted to join, seconded, I'll defer to legal counsel.
No, I did, and tell me no, and we keep going. Is it possible to ask the Congresswoman or the councilman to come up and give thoughts about what we've discussed and where we're headed?
Absolutely, and Congressman, I know this is not easy for us. We're trying to keep the ability to move the process so that we don't run afoul of the overall schedule. And I completely agree with what you had said. The FTA deadline is September, but to get there, we've got multiple pieces that we need to get to. I think, Troi, your request is, can we hear from them before we do anything? Was that right? And I'm sure, I don't want to run afoul. We've got a former judge, commissioner, controller, and congressman, so Robert's rules, she would know a whole lot better than I do. So to either of you, if you would like to. Thank you, Troi.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. The only comment I would make is in reference to some of the speculation that if there was no vote today, or that it might indicate that the project did not have the full confidence of the board and that maybe you'd get taken off the list. I think your consultant made that statement. I think the truth is the contrary. If you look at the email that I shared with all of you all, I mean, they specifically said that this April 30th deadline is internal, that their only deadline was in September, and they opened the door and said if we needed to extend that deadline, that we could. So I think that's them signaling to us that if we extend it 30 days and then later get the community input and we run behind, that then they're going to be willing to give us 30 more days after September. And you can read the email again. I mean, it says specifically they can't do this one because it's yours, but theirs is in September, and that, you know, an extension could be looked at that time. That's the first thing that I want to say. And the second one is that, you know, I'm not convinced, quite frankly, that if you take a vote today on this alignment, that it's going to change. I mean, I think it pretty much locks you in. And I think to, again, speculate that, well, if we find another one of this, I mean, it's pretty hard. I mean, I've done a lot of projects. This is not, you know, I've been a commissioner. I know how projects work. And once you start doing design, once you start doing environmental, and once you do everything, the only thing that stops it is, like for me, once when I found some, you know, we needed a historical dig because, you know, my area was all East Harris County, and they found some what appeared to be artifacts, and then the archaeologists all said, stop. So we had to stop. Or one time we found a plume that we didn't know what that was there. Then we had to stop. So usually once you get going on design and environmentals, I mean, you're on your way. So this whole notion that we can go back and start over again, you know, you're going to end up spending, that means more commitment of federal dollars. And then the third thing is the commitment in the president's budget simply means it's in the president's budget. We still have, the Republicans still have not presented their budget. We don't know what they're going to do. And then we have to go through the whole process of working through our budget. No telling when that might be. So again, I think we can all speculate, but we really don't know. You're in the president's budget. We don't know you'll end up in the final budget. And that will put a pause on everything. So a lot of things to think about, and I would again urge you to give us the time to get the community together. I agree with Commissioner Garcia and Councilmember Gallegos. You know, I've been through these fights in the north side. I've been through the fights in Harrisburg. It's not good. It does divide a community, and it's still divided in some respects because the project comes through. And there is adverse impact on our communities. I don't know in this entire corridor how many other communities are being impacted this way where you all are going to traverse right in the heart of a community. That's a good question to ask. I yield now to my colleague and friend, Councilmember Gallegos.
Thank you, Congressman. The inclusion in the president budget is just a nice sign. You're absolutely right. It's not a guarantee of dollars by any stretch, but it's a good indication. Is what we were hoping. So,
first of all, again, thank you, Chair, and thank you, board members, and thank you, Board Member Taylor, for the opportunity. Again, I want to thank you all for the opportunity of allowing the community to meet with Metro again and having 2 town hall meetings to express their concerns and coming to a solution in regards to a BRT underpass. I did reach out to Director Haddock from Public Works to make sure there is no large diameter water pipes or what have you underneath that section to make sure that that doesn't stop this underpass. And I understand that Public Works team is going to be meeting with Metro later in the week or next week. And what I understand that as of right now, there is no large diameter line in that alignment. There is normal utility adjustments that would be necessary to possibly be moved. But again, the East End has old infrastructure. I know that in Wayside we had an issue on a water leak, a major water leak in Wayside a few months ago, and the water was just pouring out. They had to close the water lines from the adjoining neighborhood all day on a Sunday. I went out there to see what the issue was, to come to find out that Public Works was just saying that the maps that they have were just old and antiquated maps, and it was hard for them to find a cutoff valve, and that's why it was taking so long to turn the water back on. So all I'm asking, if for some reason we find that there is a large water diameter there on the alignment, that Metro will come back and look at possible another route instead of building an overpass.
So overpass is off the table.
Okay.
And we've done, even though it was a short time frame, we've done our due diligence working with the city, and Yuhayna and Shri, correct me if I'm wrong, to ensure that there is any infrastructure project has some utility adjustments, but there are no massive utility adjustments that could potentially pose a fatal flaw to the concept. And that part we've most certainly checked in.
That's correct. Mr. Gallegos is right. There are no major utilities in the way.
Yeah. Great. Okay, great.
One other item. Sorry.
That's
sorry,
good. Thank you.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, thank you.
Thank you. I think the ability to ask for an extension waiver do exist. I've actually done some reading on this. David, you said it was unforeseen conditions was something that you said, but I recall reading that it is beyond Metro's control, beyond our control. Is that?
Yes, sir. That's how I read unforeseen conditions.
Okay. No, but I think I actually saw beyond our control, right, as stated in there. So that puts another, Congressman, you're right, with enough support from the delegation that could potentially be entertained, but we'll also have the burden of proof that that was a condition beyond our control. That's gave us a little bit of pause. It's a struggle. It's not easy. Not an easy decision. Not something that we take lightly at all. And I'm also, how do I say that? I think folks that look at corridors for where transit may go have looked at this long and hard to see if there is another solution. And there isn't an apparent solution that works for transit, for ridership, for eventually Federal Transit Administration rating. And I think, given we've looked at Lockwood, we've looked at the other corridors, we've looked at going from an overpass, which obviously has adverse impact, looking at an underpass. And I think that shows willingness on our part to do what's right, whether it's connectivity, green space, doing everything we can to mitigate whatever impacts there might be. At the end of the day, I think Board Member Lewter might have said this, we're never going to have everybody on board with this. We understand that. And I think we've looked at this hard enough, and that's the reason I keep saying let's have the ability to not run afoul of a federal deadline, and hence the motion on the table.
So, Mr. Chairman, just one quick comment to that, since you used my name.
You can speak even if I didn't use your name.
I know, but just wanted to say that I do want to make sure that I know you're going to say we've already said it, but I want to say it one more time, that we are making a commitment to everyone on this corridor, not just this segment, but every segment, that we are going to have robust community involvement, engagement, and that we will constantly be working with those communities, because I believe that if we don't do that, it's going to be a much more difficult project than it should be. So I just want to be sure that we're all understanding that that's on the record for now.
Oops. I think that's a commitment from the agency and a request from our stakeholders to tell us how we can improve. If we think we're doing enough, but it's not up to snuff, tell us how we can do better. I think we've been told how we can do better in the last 2 weeks, and we've shown we are more than willing to play ball. Right? So, all right. With that, if there are no other comments, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I oppose. But I want it to be clear, I oppose. I feel we need more time for community involvement, not necessarily the project.
Okay.
And I want it to be noted that it's community involvement, and that we don't, the 3 points that Congresswoman Garcia brought out, we don't have a definite time or definite dealings with whether money's going to be available, how much is going to be available, and that's what I voted on. We don't have a plan there if that budget's going to develop.
Completely understand. We can get to whether there is money and whether there'll be funding until we can get to engineering. This is the yin and the yang. Is it catch-22? So, but not to.
I'm for it, but there's some things that I still have question about. There's two sides to answers we've heard today, and I'm not clear enough to make an honest decision on it this time.
Okay, so you're when you said I'm for, you're not changing your vote.
No,
just to be, yeah, okay. You're giving your reasoning. Thank you.
That's it.
Got it. So we've got 6 in favor, 2 against. I'll be missing one board member.
Sure. Yes.
Director Hollins is not here.
And I'm gonna vote against as well.
Ah, okay. Sorry. My apologies. This year works better, so I can hear
pending
what's going on.
Pending more community engagement.
Okay. So we've got 5 in favor, 3 against, 1 board member absent. Motion carries. This is to allow us to continue working on the process. To Congresswoman Garcia's point, you're right. Historically, when you start going into design, you kind of start battling down that. You have our commitment, Congresswoman, that if we are able to find a solution that works, we will work on that. Even though we've got an LPA to allow for our paperwork and the documentation process to move forward. And we by no means take your comments lightly. I hope you know that it's a struggle, as you can see. It's a project that we've been excited about for a long time, and you can see that the angst on making a decision, because we want to make the right decision for the region, for the Eastwood community, for the 25.3-mile corridor. So we'll continue to look at if we need to come and explain why. Here is where we went to Director Morales' point on how we build that. We may not all agree on the decision on whether it's Lockwood, but it is incumbent on us to continue to try to explain to the extent we can. And I know I missed the Monday meeting. I won't leave town till we have that next meeting where we can explain why this makes sense for us and why we're confident in the work that's being done. Before we adjourn, if you'll, my colleagues know I can talk forever, but I think it is important for me to say this one more time to Mr. Lambert. Having your team rise up to the occasion when the community posts a challenge to us, I think shows your leadership, shows what the agency is made of and how much we care about what we do on Metro Next, and to your overall team for rising up to the occasion and finding a solution.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Congresswoman Garcia. She managed an extremely successful town hall meeting. She even put me on notice, so I want to make that clear. And I want to thank Councilman Gallegos, too. We had not known of the issues until he came to us about some concerns. And the Eastwood Civic Association, the president, the leadership team there, we very much appreciate their dialogue with us. They challenged us, but it was in a completely cooperative spirit. How do we solve problems? Mr. Chairman, I want to commit to the board and working with our elected leadership and the community, how do we set a discussion up, not one meeting, but multiple meetings to explain how we got to Lockwood and where we're at. Because I think we have that obligation to communicate that back to the community and continue to have a dialogue that, as we've said repeatedly, to make sure the project we're bringing forward brings value back to every community and every neighborhood we serve. There's more work to do. The staff is committed to do this work, and we do not have any hesitation as a staff from taking very constructive criticism, taking very constructive feedback on how we can do things better, and we're very committed and open to do so. And then the last comment I'll make is, the board challenged us, and I remember Director Trevino said it very directly, turn the engineers loose and let them find a solution. That's exactly what we did. So I want to thank the board for your support, your guidance, and we'll continue to be committed to move this opportunity along.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert, and with that, it's 4:58 p.m., so we do leave before 5 o'clock. No, I'm just kidding. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. 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 We are adjourned. You all please be safe with the heavy rain outside. Thank you all for joining us.